Hi, and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 155, even though it doesn't say so anywhere on this slide. But it is 155, I double checked. And it's a special week. It's the 1 week before the set is being released. And because of that, I have assembled a motley, and this one very, very motley crew of pundits. Asked them to build skeleton decks for each archetype in the draft format. And they delivered. So now we're going to talk about them and try to do one of more of our deck-centric set reviews in the format of Skeleton Crew. And this week on the Skeleton Crew we have Springbok7. You can unmute yourself and say hi.
Hi everybody. It's nice to see you guys again. It's been a while. I'm really glad to be back.
It's been a while, and maybe that's the moment when you reintroduce yourself. Therefore.
All right. I'm somebody who drafts a lot, plays a lot, and really likes Magic the Gathering and building deck shells.
There we go. We also have Tresio.
Hello again, everybody.
And
I am also a strictly limited player who does a lot of the behind the scenes for the Skeleton Crew. I try to make things look pretty and make sure slides are in place and help Circuits remain sane.
So remember, if the slides look bad, it's Tresio's fault. And we also have SamP.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. I recently started a podcast called Rough Drafts, and I also draft a lot.
Yeah, it's like bleeding a stone with those three. And I'm Sherkovitz, and I'm your host, and I didn't contribute anything in terms of the draft skeletons, but I'm going to try to moderate those very eager speakers today. So obviously thanks to mtgazone.com and Bulkbox and to my patrons who I love very much, but I won't dedicate a single second to them because we have to move on with the material and start talking about building a skeleton. And some of you may ask, what the hell are they talking? There's only one skeleton in the set, so why would you be building them? Skeletons is a concept that me and Sander Kerstens in the time immemorable have swiped off Sam Black, who in process swiped it from actually WotC design team. The idea is that instead of making a set review with the cards and grading them, we build decks and we try to figure out what, in our opinion, will be an interesting deck. And through discussing those decks, we can actually shed some light on cards individually, but also in the context of whole build deck. But of course, we are sickos, so if you gave us no restrictions in building a deck, you would end up with like 12 mythics and 17 non-basic lands. So we had to put some restrictions on ourselves, and we highly recommend you trying to build your own skeletons. You can do that on sealeddeck.tech, who doesn't sponsor us, but basically makes it all possible for everyone that tries to build skeletons by developing this link. Don't worry, slides are going to be available on my Patreon to everyone. I'm not restricting them behind any paywall, so you can actually find that link, or you can just go to sealeddeck.tech and figure it out on your own. And we have some limitations on building the deck. So we basically agreed that we're going to put between 0 and 2 rares and mythics without any duplication. Between 0 and 10 uncommons, because uncommons are the new commons, thanks to play boosters. And then, try to be realistic with them. Sometimes you can put 2, but you shouldn't have like every one of them in duplicates because you just won't open those kind of pools in the real world. And then once you're done with the rares and mythics and uncommons, you fill the rest with commons with a maximum 2 of each, and fill in the basic lands and non-basic lands that you can. Non-basic lands, the same rules apply as to normal commons or uncommons. So after that, we can discuss what we've built, compare notes, ask about interesting cards that we didn't think about. And through that, we can come to some kind of a better understanding of the new format before it gets released. But before we go into that, we always have a lengthy introductions of the format, starting with the damage-based removal statistics for the set. I always do some Scryfall search. This time I looked at all the creatures and all the job select equipment and all the token generators, and they tried to see, okay, what percentage of cards, creature cards at given rarity are killed by, let's say, a shock or a lightning bolt, which actually is in the set, by the way. So first of all, we have things that die from pinging by 1. There is no dedicated spell that can ping for 1. There is one mini sweeper that gives -1/-1 to all creatures. But maybe it's a shame that there is no 1 mana ping, because this set looks like it's pretty good actually for 1 mana ping, because 28% of creatures at common are X1s. And this is much more than normally. Normally, I would expect something like 15% of creature being in that category. This time we had 28, so almost double of that. Also, 20% of the uncommons are 1 toughness, and 8% of rares and mythics, you don't expect too many of those being 1 toughness. But this means that, okay, maybe the 1 damage spell does not exist, but there are things like the new version of Ravenous Rats, don't ask me how it's called, Hexa Eyes or something, which is a 1/1 creature. It might be better in this format than normally based on its body. We don't know how good this card is going to be, but the body might be actually useful because it can trade with multiple creatures. Maybe those left behind job select hero tokens are not so bad because they can kill something. Then we have the 2 damage spells, and we do have a shock variant in Thunder Magic, but we also have Wayne's Treachery, a 2 mana, give a creature -2/-2 with a kicker. But for 2 mana, you can just basically kill something smaller. It kills half of the creatures at common, half of the creatures at uncommon, and around a quarter of the creatures at rare and mythic. And this is relatively normal. But what it means is that there are not so many creatures with toughness 2. Because since there are more than usually creatures with toughness 1, but the sum of creatures with toughness 1 and toughness 2 is normal, it means that there are fewer 2 toughness creatures than regularly, at least at their lower rarities. Then we have 3 damage spells. There is Supplex, but Supplex is a bit special because it kills way more creatures than 3 damage would, because it also can kill big artifact creature, which there's quite a few of those actually in the set. But if there was a lightning bolt, which I remind you there is in this set in the bonus sheet, lightning bolt would kill 74% of the creatures at common, 72 at uncommon, 57 at rare. This is again relatively par for the course for that kind of spell in sets from the recent years. Then we move to 4 damage. Thunder Magic, apart from being a shock, can also be deal 4, and that does kill already 95% of the commons. And 87% of the uncommon. So it's pretty close to unconditional removal for the low rarity cards. Also kills 3/4 of the rares and mythics. By the way, I'm looking only at the face value. Some of them can transform into something atrociously big, and then of course you're out of the range, but I counted face value because I thought it would be more elegant to do it like that rather than try to entertain the speculations of how often will you flip a particular card. There is no 5 damage spell, so I put Choco Comet because Choco Comet looks great. Have there been a 5 damage spell, it would kill 95% of commons, 93% of uncommons, and 88% of rares. And we do have a 6 damage spell, actually a couple of those. There is a kicked version of the Wayne's Treachery, and that gives -6/-6 to something. And we also have a red spell that deals 6 damage and destroys an equipment. And these kill all the commons, 95% of uncommons, and 91% of the rares, which is closing on unconditional removal there. Apart from that, we also have some weird conditional removals. And 3 of those I put seriously, and 1 of those not very much seriously. First, we have Battle Menu, which is a sweet-looking spell. It's got 4 different modes. You can make a 2/2 knight at instant speed. You can give target creature +0/+4 until end of turn. Or, and this is the mode we're going to be looking at, it can destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, or you can gain 4 life, which is really a desperation mode on this one, but sometimes you are desperate. When it comes to the destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, 20% of commons and uncommons, around 40% of rares get killed by that, which is not bad on something that can give you a vanilla 2/2 or ambushing vanilla 2/2 or +0/+4 as a buyout modes. Then we have Airship Crush, which is Broken Wings but with cycling, so strictly better Broken Wings. And please don't find me corner cases; it's just better. It does kill almost 50% of creatures at common, thanks to the combination of equipment creatures, which I counted killing an equipment actually counts as killing a creature because that equipment is a substantial part of the equipment creature. I know, not perfect, but okay. We do have saga creatures, which are enchantments and also are killed by that. We have a good collection of flyers as well. So quite some few creatures can be killed by the Airship Crash. So looks like potentially it might be playable, especially with the cycling. It's not that I recommend putting cards with cycling 2 into your deck because maybe one time you will use it, but actually that looks like it has a good amount of targets. So maybe playable. And also like 30% of uncommons, 20% of rares. Then we have Phoenix Down. That's the less serious of the conditional removals. However, it is one. It's a 1-mana artifact. For 1 and a white, you can tap it and exile it, and then you can choose one of the options. One is return target creature card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, so reanimation for cheaper things. But the other option is exile target skeleton, spirit, or zombie. And it does kill 2% of common creatures. It means there is one skeleton or one zombie, actually. And then there is one of them common, and I think that this one is a skeleton and can be killed by that. You're probably going to put it into your deck because you want it as a reanimation spell. However, don't forget, there are 2 fringe cases when you can use it as a kill spell. Don't forget about it. It will be a great story to tell, and your opponent will be definitely annoyed if you do that. And then we have Suplex, just to show you how much more does it kill than the 3 damage would. We have 81% of the commons, 84% of the uncommons, and that's compared to 74 and 72 respectively if you only look at the damage. So it increases the range by quite a lot. And there are some juicy targets for the artifact part of it that include like 7/7s and 8/8s. So the destroy exile artifact mode on it will not be a trinket text, I think. All right, and apart from that, we have sweepers. We have one proper Wrath, and that's Ultima, just destroy everything and end the turn even for good measure so that no death triggers can resolve. That's a white one. It costs 5 mana, including 2 of it being white. Then we have Summon Leviathan, which is not technically a sweeper, it's a must bounce. It's a 6/6 word 2 enchantment saga creature. And when it enters, it bounces each creature that isn't a Kraken, Leviathan, Merfolk, Octopus, or Serpent. And there are some Merfolks and Octopus and Leviathans in the set, or Krakens maybe, I don't know. But there's a couple of those lying around, so it won't bounce everything by default. Still, probably will bounce most of it, including killing all the tokens, and leaves the big body behind for a couple of turns. Then we have Poison the Waters, which is a mini sweeper, gives -1/-1 to creatures until end of turn, and has an option of being basically a coercion type for creatures and artifact. Another mini sweeper is Xenos Yay Galvus. 5 mana 4/4. When it enters, it gives -2/-2 to each creature except for one creature that an opponent controls. And then if that one creature that was saved by Xenos dies at some stage, then the Xenos transforms into some kind of a massive 8/8. Then there is the easiest castable card, Zodiarch, Umbral God. Black for indestructible 5/5. When it enters, each player sacrifice half of their non-god creatures, rounded down, and then whenever a player sacrifices another creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. I mean, if you can cast it, probably is great. Just the problem is casting it. And then we have 2 red sweepers. Fire Magic is one of the tiered cards. I'm going to go a bit deeper on them later, but basically you can pay different modes on them, and depends on which mode you pay, that's what you're getting. You can pay 0 for it to deal 1 to each creature. You can pay 2 extra on top of the red mana cost to deal 2 to each creature, and then 5 to deal 3 to each creature at instant speed. And then we have Nibelheim, a flame, 2 red sorcery with flashback for 7. And then you choose a creature you control, and it deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. And if this spell was cast from your graveyard, discard your hand and draw 4 cards, which is nice. We also have a bunch of protection sort of spells, protection from being wrathed, I guess. First, there's Moggle's Valor, that just makes a bunch of 1/2 lifelink Muggles, sorry, and then creature you control get indestructible until end of turn. Looks pretty sweet. It makes the bunch of those Muggles based on how many creatures you already have. So if you have 5 creatures, you make 5 1/2s, and then everything you have gets indestructible, and those Muggles also have lifelink, which can be a nice, nasty trick. And then we have Restoration Magic. That's another tiered card, and that one mode can give all creatures you control indestructible and hexproof. And then we have Knights of the Round as the summon. This one just doesn't give you resistance to wraths. However, it is a 3/3 indestructible that just produces 3 2/2s every turn. So they can wrath you can rebuild in a second. And then there's Ancient Adamantoise, and that's an 8/20, and all damage that will be dealt to you or permanents you control is dealt to it, which means that your creatures are protected from all those damage-based sweepers like Red has to offer. Just a quick look at the creature sizing in comparison with other sets. I told you that this is quite a lot of X1s. Only MH3 had similar number of those. So this is quite a high number of creatures with 1 toughness. Shock, killable creatures are regular, basically, as for other sets. Similar thing with the 3 damage, creatures killed by 3 damage. That's relatively average for the recent sets. Nothing special here. And 95% are getting killed by spell with 4 is also quite normal for sets. I noticed that 4 damage is a sort of breakpoint for recent sets. There are sets where it's either 95 or 85% of the creatures are killed by 4 damage spells, and not much in between those two values. So it's interesting. I think that most of the sets when there is more of the big butt creatures are the ones when there is big land cycling creatures, and that's why there's so many of them.
Cyril, can I make a comment on this slide? Sure. Even though some of the values here for Final Fantasy, especially like looking at 2 damage and 3 damage, are similar to some previous sets, I think that there's going to be an adjustment that players are going to have to make coming out of Dragonstorm. Because of the differential between the 45% and 80% of 2 damage to 3 damage that there was in Dragonstorm, I mean, you really felt in Dragonstorm the difference between being able to do 3 damage to something and deal 2. I mean, even just think about the 3 toughness aggro creatures that were prevalent in Dragonstorm. And so it's not even just, it's just a 5 or 6% differential within, compared to the previous set. It's the differential between 2 damage and 3 damage, which in Dragonstorm was 35% of the creatures. And in Final Fantasy, that's going to be 23% of the creatures. That to me is going to be a huge difference. And so dealing 2 damage is going to feel much better in this set, and dealing 3 damage is going to feel not as satisfying.
And here we have those exact numbers that you're talking about. When we look at the prevalence of each toughness basically on its own, and you see that 23% of creatures have 3 toughness when it was 35 in Timur Dragonstorm. This is actually going to be a big difference. And yes, you did feel those shock troops. Shock troops? I'm already forgetting the names. I already deleted the Dragonstorm names from my head. Brigade. Shock Brigade, that's the one. Shock Troops is a bit older. Elegant weapon from the different time. 4 mana, 2/2. You can sacrifice it to deal 2 to something. I don't remember from which set. Shock Brigade and all kinds of those 1/3s were problematic, and there's going to be very few creatures with power 3. And yes, also not so many 2 toughness creatures, but quite a lot of 1 toughness creatures in this particular set. Yeah, and that's, I think, for the sizing. And we can move on to the mechanics of the set. And is someone that wants to be talking about the job select?
Yeah, I could talk about that.
Go on then.
This was my slide. Job select is kind of like a, if you remember for Mirrodin, there's a lot of similarities. The card comes in, it's an equipment, magically a creature gets created and the equipment gets attached to that creature. There are 16 such of these equipment cards spanning all of the colors and plenty of them available at common and uncommon. Creates a 1/1 colorless hero creature token and then attaches the equipment to it. This is going to be important for a couple of reasons. It's going to create a lot of additional artifacts floating around. And also it's going to be a way of creating creatures with non-creature spells. It's going to be a very reliable way to do that. So there's several of the decks that you're going to see later where they're going to care about how many non-creature spells are being cast and in what situations. So that's going to play into that. It also matters somewhat that each of these is adding a creature type to the creature. So you can see all of the different, it's a whole variety of creature types, but there are going to be decks that care about artificers. There are going to be decks that care about wizards. And so not every one of these creature types has a ton of synergy in the set, but some of them do. You'll see some of them in our skeletons later. And so you need to realize that there's other reliable ways of creating those types than simply looking for the creature type on a creature card.
Yeah, maybe to add, I mean, those creature types are not going to be like full tribal type of synergies, but it's going to be more like pocket of synergy. There's a couple of cards that care about the knights. In the bonus sheet, there is even something that cares about ninjas, so that might come in handy one day, once every blue moon.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the reasons that I called out wizard and artificer specifically, because I think that the largest pockets of synergy are there. I mean, those are the two where I think you can build a good chunk of a deck around them in certain cases, especially if you get the right rare or two. The re-equip costs are generally high, so don't plan on moving these around all over the place. Although, if you're in red white, as you'll see, there's lots of free ways to equip equipment for free. But just realize that the main benefit is going to be on the first play when it equips to that hero. Obviously, there's synergy with flicker effects where you can flicker the equipment and then you've created another creature. Artifact matters are going to care about this. Go wide payoffs to a certain degree because again you're just creating additional bodies and additional cardboard. White red, as you'll see later, is labeled as equipment aggro, and there are 11 actual equipment matters cards, like the number of equipments you have or when an equipment enters, not just a creature that's getting a buff by being equipped. There's a lot of interesting equipment matters synergy going on in the set.
Okay, and second mechanic that we have in the set that looks pretty sweet actually, and we didn't, I think, put many of those in the decks. Oh no, there are some actually. Are the creature sagas, and these are just sagas that are also a creature, which means that they have the same mechanic as sagas. They come into play, they get the first lore counter, and then they continue putting lore counters on themselves until the last one when they die. So they are not going to be on the battlefield for long, but they do have some neat effects. Anyone wants to talk about those?
I could take creature sagas. So there's 17 summons in all colors, but they're focused in Naya. 15 enter as sagas, and 2 are, I believe, rares that transform into creature sagas.
I think one of them is an uncommon equipment that
yeah, that's right. Yeah. They're all going to have 3 to 4 chapters. So the 3 chapter ones, you only get 1 attack with them because you play them, and it's it only gets 1 attack step because it has summoning sickness. But they do get 2 to 3 blocks. So you get to block the turn it comes down. There's also 6 higher rarity legends. Oh, okay, so the 2 that need transforming are still uncommons, but there's 6 higher rarity legends that transform into sagas, with 5 looping the saga, so it transforms back. And there is a small amount of lore counter manipulation, specifically in white-green. I think it's the green-white signpost, and I think it's just that that green fight spell that can take off lore counters and put
Yeah.
them back on.
A small pocket.
Yeah, very small. Yeah, but it will happen because I think these cards are pretty good. Play on quite a bit. So they're on rate, so the effect value is a key part, which means they were designed to live to the last counter to make it worth. Something I've noticed too is that the common ones, there's only 3 common ones. Those all have 4 chapters. I think you're going to want to try to trade those off because the saga abilities are a lot more minor, and it seems like a lot of the uncommons, like you can see Summon Fenrir here, are a lot more value focused. So you that one is a good one to try to get to the last chapter.
Yeah, I mean, but because when I thought about it, I mean, they could have gone with like Saga is sort of like Blastoderm. You play 3 mana, I got a 5/5 Blastoderm with the current rate of creatures. You got a 5/5, and then you hit for twice with it or something. But they didn't go that way, so they are just like normal, like 4 mana, 3/3 flyer or something, which means that only can attack like twice or once. So it means that there must be value in those chapters that is quite high, which will make it interesting. Will we be blocking with those, or will we be just threatening to block? And if no one calls the bluff, we're going to be very happy to get the full value of them. And I still don't know exactly what am I going to be doing, because of course you can only figure that out once you start playing with the cards. But it's going to be an interesting puzzle for the first days of the format, at least. Okay, flashback. Maybe Springbok, you can take the flashback.
All right, so there's 14 flashback cards. So they're spread across all 5 colors, but we're mostly focused on UR to enable the theme. There's 11 sorceries and there's 3 instants. So the flashback cost is always 4 or more, again, to support UR mostly. About 6 of them make creatures, so there's more support for the non-creature spell synergy. So you can play your quote-unquote creatures and still trigger your non-creature spell synergies. And a lot of them are spread between creatures and card selection. Those are most of the flashback effects. There is Aron's Inspiration here, which doesn't really fit into those categories, but the majority of them are creatures or card selection.
Nope. Yeah. Yeah, and again, these allow you to increase the density of your non-creature spells as well, because hopefully you can cast them twice sometimes. Although it's not going to be easy, as most of them will cost like 7. Also, like within the flashback cards are a couple of cards that allow you to pay 8 mana to cast something, and that comes up on, again, a couple of cards. And I think that this set has a lot of those things that are, oh yeah, it comes up on a couple of cards. And in draft, this tells me, ooh, there's going to be maybe some neat decks that very rarely come together, but be ready for those. And then we have Transform, which is another main mechanic. So there are 27 transforming permanents across all colors. And as we said, 8 transform into creature sagas. And that includes 6 of those rare ones that can sometimes loop. There are 5 side quests, which is a category of enchantment that when it enters, it has some kind of an effect. And then there's a condition you need to meet. And once the condition is being met, then you can transform it into a creature. And there are 13 creatures and 1 land that can transform. And it's a good mix of conditional things like the X-Death Void Warlock. That's 1 black-green for a 3/3. When it enters, you gain 3 life. And at the beginning of your end step, if there are 6 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, you can transform it, and it transforms into an X3, where X is the number of permanents in your graveyard. So just a slight upgrade. But some of them are just like you pay mana, you flip it, and happy times. And some are a combination, like Ultimecia. This one has 8 mana transform ability, but you also need to have 8 cards in your graveyard that you exile in order to make that happen. So you both need to pay the mana and fulfill the criterion of having 8 cards in your graveyard and then exiling them. So a mix of those. And yeah, these again, like increase the sort of range of late game abilities in the format, because they can be usually cheaper on the front side and then bigger and more expensive and conditional on the back side. So some of them will definitely require a certain amount of building around in order to make them work. And tiered, again, I can take those because there's only 6 cards of those. They have those modes. Cheapest one, middle one, and very overpriced third one. And they do random things. There's a bounce spell, there's a damage spell, there's a combat trick, there is a weird version of one of those spells when a creature dies it comes back, but also it is a combat trick because it changes the power and toughness of that creature. And there is the white protection spell, and there is a red sweeper. So fake your own death, that's the one I meant. So it allows the spells to scale with the game, and then it lets you have cheap spells in your deck that later can trigger those spend 4 or 8 mana synergies in blue-red decks. So that's the interesting part of them. And then there's a bonus sheet. And this is not a normal bonus sheet. Like we're used to the normal bonus sheets in recent sets. There was 1 card from the bonus sheet in each pack. This is not it. Here we're gonna get a bonus sheet card once every 3 packs. And that changes quite a lot the rarity. So normally in the bonus sheet, the uncommons were at the same rarity as regular uncommons. The uncommons in this sheet include Counterspell, Fatal Push, and Lightning Bolt. And maybe it's for the good that they are not at the same rarity as normal uncommons, because they would just take over the format very quickly. Because they are once every 3 packs, it so happens that uncommon is roughly as rare as rare in the main set. So you won't see them all the time, but you will see them relatively frequently. Rares from that sheet, and it's a good mixture of completely useless commander cards and amazing build around potential cards. These are twice as rare as the main set mythics. So you won't see them very frequently, but it will happen. And then the mythics from the bonus sheet are 4 times as rare as the main set mythics. I think I calculated for a specific mythic to appear so a mythic will appear once every 2 draft pods. A specific mythic will happen once every 38 or so draft pods, so it won't happen very frequently. But there are some cool cards in there that might add to the experience of playing the format. I think that one of our skeletons is built around one of the mythics from the bonus sheet, or rares from the bonus sheet. So we will see that in a second. Okay, and who wants to talk about fixing?
I'll take fixing.
Cool.
So fixing looks pretty good, centered in green. So there's a whole, as you'll see later, there is a new land subtype called town. And there is like the whole blue-green theme is town. So they put a bunch of cards that care about towns and find towns. So we got Blitzball, which is the Manolith variant that has a little bit of additional value as a 5-color fixer. We have some cards that can search lands. So Commune with Beavers is one of those type of cards that's like, I think it's called like Adventurous Impulse, which hasn't been good in the past. But this one getting land, artifact, or creature is a pretty widespread. The card next to Commune with Beavers, I'm not going to try to pronounce, is kind of like a district guide.
Saj?
Saj? Yeah, Saj. We won't mess with the last name. I'm already
Catsroy.
And then some more commons. Commune with Beavers is on here twice, of course. And Town Greeter looks like a great one, though. It's a Satyr Wayfinder variant, but if you find a town, you gain 2, which is a lot of upside on a card that I think is already pretty good. And then just the lands, there's going to be one of the common towns, like Guado Salam, right here in the center. One of the common duels, I believe, is going to be the land slot at 55% of the time, I think it is. So slightly more than 50. So definitely a big step down from the Gainlands in Tarkir, but a lot closer to like the duels in Duskmourn.
Yeah, it's going to be, with 55%, they're going to be around a bit more frequent than uncommons, but much less frequent than commons. It's going to be probably around 1 per pod for each of those.
Yeah. And then we also have I'm kind of going in a random order. We have a Crossroads Village at common, which is a town that's the can't remember the name. The like enters tapped, choose a color as it enters. That's an actual common, not like in the land slot. At uncommon, there's Capital City as another town, which is one of the Crystal Grotto variants. So you can filter mana into a different color at the cost of 1 mana, like we saw in stuff like Wilds of Eldraine or Outlaws. But the variant on this one, instead of having Scry or Surveil, is Cycling 2, which is an interesting difference between the enters Surveil. Not sure how that pans out. There's a bunch of other utility towns. There's one at rare, specifically in blue-green. It's the only rare land, I think, in the whole set. But it's in blue-green, which is the town's color, which is like a tap land that can transform into something.
I think there's still the starting town at rare.
Oh, yeah, a rare like fixing land, which is like a City of Brass variant. And then there's also a bunch of towns that tap for colorless. I think there's 3 or 4. You can see here Golden Saucer, which involves flipping coins. But I know there's one that's a riff on, I can't remember the card name, something Fountain, which is a colorless land that is a town. Radiant Fountain, that's right. That it gains 2 when it enters. So something you might be interested in if you have specific ways to search up towns in your deck. One card that's not pictured here is a card at common in green that's an instant that search a land or town, like a basic or a town, and put it
I think that's on the next slide.
Oh, we have another slide. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of mana
Many
fixing in
more,
ramp
yeah.
because one archetype is revolving around it. So
yeah, running through, we got Reach the Horizon, which is a circuitous route variant. So search your library for 2 basic lands or towns with different names, put them onto the battlefield tapped. I'm going to skip over the rares for now. The Summon Fenrir searches a basic tapped. That one looks very strong. Prisha's Wanderings, that's the one that I was going to say. It's a 3-mana instant rampant growth. So you can get a land or a town tapped, and you also get a 1/1 counter. There's Emperor of Palamecia, which is a blue-red mana dork. There is Ignis Scientia, which also looks very strong. It's kind of a riff on Elvish Rejuvenator. So it's a 3-mana 2/2. When it enters, you look at the top 6 and you get a land, or you get any land from among them onto the battlefield. Poo Poo UFO.
I think Pew Pew. Let's go with the Pew Pew.
Okay. Pew Pew UFO can put lands from your hand onto the battlefield and has another ability that calls out towns. Also, just an 0/4 body might be useful for those towns decks. Ring of the Lucii is a 4-mana mana rock that's also the kind of icy manipulator variant. Some serious mana fixing or mana ramp if you're interested in a colorless rock. And then there's a couple of rares on this page. There's Choco, Seeker of Paradise, which finds lands when birds attacks. There's Summon Titan, which mills a bunch of cards, then brings lands back from the graveyard to the battlefield. And then there is the Regalia, which is a vehicle that...
It's a car. I mean, it's literally a car. For those of you that don't see the art, it's like a normal car.
It's a vehicle that can reveal cards from the top of your library until you hit a land whenever it attacks. So a decent amount of ramp and fixing. A lot of it's to support the blue-green towns deck, but I couple.
I put 20 cards in there, including 1 duplicate, as I learned. But there's a 1/3 thing that taps for green. There is another wolf that taps for mana of any color. There's like tons of ramp and mana things.
Yeah, I think even outside of green, like it's definitely centered in green. Like there's so much ramp and fixing because not only is there a towns theme, but there's like a slight landfall theme in red green. But the fixing looks really good outside of green as well, with like Blitzfall or the dual lands. And there's a lot of mechanical overlap with a lot of the 2-color pairs that I have some deck skeletons that takes advantage of.
There's also prime time on the bonus sheet.
There is prime time. There's, Farseek is probably even more realistic. Yeah. There's a good Farseek for those town lands. That's going to be a great card in those. And that's only at rare rarity. So okay, golden commons. Tresio, maybe that's yours. I think this slide.
I think I did this one.
Oh, you did this one. Okay, go Springbok.
So there's 20 multicolor uncommons. Each gold color pair has 2 gold uncommons. All of them are legendary, and they generally work well with each other and focus on similar overlapping themes. You can kind of see here that like the Emperor of Palamecia and Shantoto both are kind of like 4 spells payoffs. The Emperor also like grants you to the 4 mana non-creature spells, which is nice. But then like X-Death and Cloud of Darkness are both like fill your graveyard with permanents, and then they pay you off for doing so. While X-Death is also just like a pretty good rate creature. And then Giot is like an aggressive double striker who wants equipment. Zidane is just like a good card, but he plays pretty well in an aggressive deck, which your deck is probably going to be if you're playing a Giot deck.
Yeah, great right foot volley. Europeans will get it. And I think that, yeah, and then of course there are, we're going to talk about each of the signposts at least a bit during the introduction for each color pair. And we can go with the color pairs now. I mean, we're super efficient today, honestly. So first, I called each slide about the color pair after the official name from the WotC. But I realized as I was doing that I don't agree with lots of those names. I mean, at least not 100%. And it's sometimes hard to see how you would build one of those decks as prescribed by the description on the WotC. So Orzhov white-black is called Sacrifice. And it's not just so much that you can sacrifice, to be fair. Like, no, there's a lot of things you can sacrifice. There's not many things that allow you to sacrifice stuff. So the signpost for that is Judge Magister Gabranth, white-black for a 2/2 menace. And then when a creature or artifact you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is a great creature on rate when you think about it. And then you make it a 3/3, you're super happy with it. And then there is Rufus Shinra, colorless, white and black for a creature 2/4. Whenever it attacks, if you don't control creature named Darkstar, create Darkstar, a legendary white and black 2/2 dog creature token. So if you manage to attack with it, you get sort of like 4/6 of stats for 3 mana, which sounds quite good in my books. So these are slightly prescriptive, but not specifically. They don't allow sacrificing stuff, which probably in case of Judge Magister is a good thing, because if that would be able to sacrifice things, that would probably be too busted. But then I looked through the set and not so much that allows you sacrificing. I found Phantom Train, a 4 mana vehicle. It's a 4/4 with trample, and you can sacrifice artifact or a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on it. It becomes a spirit artifact creature in addition to its other types until end of turn. By the way, Feathers Down can kill it then. And then you can swing with it. It's going to be bigger, and it lets you sacrificing things. There is Ariman. That's a 3 mana 2/2 flying with Death Touch, and for 3 mana you can sacrifice a creature or an artifact to draw a card. And then there's Namazu Trader. That's a 4 mana 3/4. When this creature enters, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token, which you can sacrifice, by the way. And then when it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact if you do Surveil 2. So that gives you some fodder for sacrificing that can sacrifice itself, and also it lets you sacrifice something later. But I didn't find that much apart from those, which is a bit problematic if you think about that. It's supposed to be a sacrifice archetype, and then there's not so much that you can sacrifice with. There is a Deadly Dispute in the bonus sheet, notably. That's probably the best sacrifice card in the set, albeit at a rarity of rare, technically at least.
There's also Vane's Treachery at common, which is the -2/2 spell that has kicker.
Oh, yeah. That's true. There is also this one that allows you to sacrifice a creature to kill something big. But again, you want to do that maybe late in the game, but you don't want to overkill something just to sacrifice a creature in an early stage. And, with Judge Magister Gabranth, you probably want to sacrifice things quite early. So it grows. And again, not so many opportunities to do that.
And it's notable here, by the way, that there are more black cards than white cards, and the white cards are not terribly exciting.
Yeah.
Which is why we will see certain very black skeletons later.
Oh, yeah. Gratia, I think, is the one that is quite exciting. That's a 5 mana 3/5 with reach, and whenever one or more other creatures and or artifacts you control die. By the way, they changed this. Now artifacts also die like creatures. You draw a card. Ability triggers once each turn. So it's basically Morbid Opportunist, but bigger. And with reach, for some reason, on a white creature. Okay, I mean, I selected some cards like, Heck Dice. That's the Ravenous Rat of the format. Probably a good thing in that kind of a deck because you can sacrifice it without shedding a tear. Albet Salvagers. That's a 3 mana 2/3. That's sort of blood artisty. Whenever this creature, another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So not really blood artist because only your things count, but. What was the other one? Zulaport Cutthroat? Is that the one that only your creatures count?
Vengeful Blood Witch.
Maybe if we want to go closer to the nowadays.
Is Zulaport only yours? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, Zulaport is only yours.
Yeah. Then there's like things like Aerith Rescue Mission that a modal spell. One of the modes is make 3 1/1s. Again, potential sacrifice fodder. My thing is like, where do I sacrifice them? Do I just put a bunch of tokens on the train, and that's how I win? I think that this looks like the easiest way of dealing with it. And then I thought also, like, if you are sacrificing things and artifacts and creatures, you might as well have things that care about number of permanents in your graveyard, or things that allow you to recur the permanents in your graveyard, like Fight On. That's a return up to 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand, or Final Days, where you create 2 tapped 2/2s, but if it was flashbacked for 6 mana, you create X 2/2s, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So hopefully you put some creature cards in your graveyard by then, and it will make a lot, and then you can sacrifice those, and it does something. But I didn't see it as a coherent archetype, so I don't know. Is it one of yours, Tresio?
Yeah, I mean, the key, like, I built it mono black because I wasn't very excited with the white payoffs, especially with the 2 color uncommons there. The way I imagine this deck is you draft one or both of the rares that are pictured, and like you pick that first, and then you go in this direction. I basically started exploring whether you could build a deck that could actually make use of Zodiark, because if you're occupying all 5 mana and you can play Zodiark reasonably on like turn 5 or 6, there are issues. I mean, the fact that it's indestructible itself, the fact that a bunch of other stuff blows up, it has the same. Whenever a player sacrifices another creature, it's kind of the same idea as the white black uncommon. It's not when a creature dies, it's when a player sacrifices. But if you're building the deck to sacrifice a bunch of stuff yourself, and it forces the sacrificing of all kinds of who knows what on the board, and then all of a sudden, it's on turn 5 or 6, it's like an 8/8, 9/9, 10/10 indestructible force.
Maybe let's give a context that Zodiark is the green black god, 5/5 indestructible. When it enters, each player sacrifices half of their non-gods, rounded down, and then whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it will probably come to the battlefield at least as a 7/7, maybe more.
Yeah,
because you sacrifice 1 probably creature or something. They sacrifice 1 or 2.
And Phantom Train is in. I put a couple of Phantom Trains in because the free sacrifice, at any point at instant speed, sometimes bonus it becomes a creature. Great, it can attack or block or do things, but it's more that you just get to sacrifice your stuff for free whenever you want. And I think now if you go to the next slide, I call out a couple of Yeah, so I think a really key card in this deck is Vincent's Limit Break, because of the ability to play it, sacrifice your thing comes back, to be able to play those 1/1s that cause your opponent to discard and look, they're annoying, they came back again. And by the way, when you play Vincent's Limit Break, they're also not 1/1s, they're at least a 3/2 or something much bigger.
Yeah, Vincent Limit Break is one of those tier spells. This one specifically in black, and it makes your creature come back, and also before anything happens, that creature becomes a 3/2, 5/2, or 7/2. So it can trade up really efficiently and then die, get your death triggers, and also come back and get your maybe ETB if you played it on something like on the what's the Ravenous Rat version? Hex something.
Heck dies, yeah.
Yeah, it's at the top there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The hex size.
Yeah, it is. I just have a very small screen and a very bad eyesight. That's the problem.
The Shambling
You will see me going like this sometimes.
The Shambling Seath also, I think, is a nice card here. I really like that they made this card uncommon.
Shambling Seath, that's 3 mana, 3/3, enters tapped, and when you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay a black. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah, and notably, it's a 3 mana, 3/3. It's not one of these like wimpy, 1 mana 1/2s or 2/1s or something that toward the end of the game is nothing but a chump blocker. Like, this is actually a reasonable creature, and also those other creatures that we've seen at common before, they often have relatively expensive return to your hand costs, like 3 mana or something. Paying 1 black, I mean, you're very often just going to be able to do that, especially if you notice this deck has a relatively low curve. I mean, there's a lot of little stuff going on. And so you're reasonably going to be able to, play something that causes sacrifice, put it back in your hand. Maybe it's not till the next turn that you replay it, but the fact of the matter is you're going to be able to grind and get value back and re-sacrifice. And
I think big problem with this is the enter tapped clause. I think that limits the usefulness of it as a defensive creature.
Yeah, for sure. Its main benefit here is that it's a real creature if it sticks around, and if it doesn't stick around, it's just repeatable sacrifice fodder. And it's not incredibly expensive. In other words, you often will see the 1 or 2 mana creature that is less of a creature that enters tapped that costs 3 mana to bring back to your hand. That's been very common in previous sets. The total mana cost here is not greater. In fact, it's a little less. And the creature, if you want it to stick around, is more of a real creature, which is nice.
Yeah.
I think the next slide has, so Final Days is just great here. I mean, it's you're creating 2 tap 2/2s, but again, remember,
I see a theme there.
Yeah, exactly. But you're creating sacrifice fodder. That's the goal here. Remember that you're building this deck around those rares, and so you're going to be playing rares that blow up entire portions of the board and that encourage you. For example, Sephiroth begins by sacrificing one of your creatures to draw a card, and then when you transform it, you can sacrifice as many creatures as you want to draw as many cards as you want. I mean, the black doesn't often draw lots of cards without killing you with life loss. And so you're kind of building around that idea. And then you have things that become very real creatures and problems in things like Phantom Train that you can just annoyingly turn into a creature. If you have a Phantom Train on board, you don't really care that you have this tap 2/2 that's coming in or this tap 3/3 that's coming in, because Phantom Train can just sack it and become a 5/5 or a 6/6 or a something immediately. And it's
with trample. I think
trample, right.
The
So
trample is what convinces me that the train is actually not useless, because if it was just a big Dumbo, I wouldn't be super happy playing it. But because it can not be properly champed, I'm very much more interested in it. Also, can you talk me through the Undercity Dire Rat? Because I think that this is maybe a key card for this.
Yeah, I mean, Undercity Dire Rat is it's a 2 mana 2/2, but when it dies, it creates a treasure token. And so what it's doing is it's ramping you toward things like Zodiark or Sephiroth, or it's ramping you toward those cards. And at minimum, it's allowing you to double spell earlier so that you can do things like sack a thing, play something else for value. It's enabling some. So this is definitely
And of course, you sacrifice the treasure.
Yes, exactly. And the treasure's an artifact, and we already saw the, and apparently now treasures die, which is, it's like your
Poor
dream
treasures.
of riches has died along with it. But it's definitely, this is an archetype that I would only recommend exploring if you start by drafting one of those rares that is just an extreme payoff for sacrificing. And if I'm going to enjoy doing that in this format. If I see one of those early, I will very much try to go down this mono black path. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of resistance in getting most of the commons and uncommons that you want here.
Yeah, and at least Sephiroth you will only see early, I assume. Zodiac you might actually see later in pack 1, because even arena drafters know that BBBBB is a bit of a restrictive mana cost there. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one works. Any thoughts from you, Springbok or SamP?
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of white black in general. Mono black aside, like I think a lot of these archetypes, probably about a third of them, the wizard's like assigned theme is not going to be exactly what your deck cares about. Like you can have all of the stuff in black white that makes tokens and not necessarily have to sacrifice them, because sacrificing stuff is a downside. Like you could just make a bunch of tokens and then move your equipment around to win. Just cards that generate rectangles are going to be valuable. And I think black white has a lot of good cards. It has 2 really good gold cards. And I think you can just try to not build you don't necessarily need to build an aristocrat style deck to have a
by all means
deck.
This is like the theme of what we're trying to do normally in those reviews, is to try to identify where do we think that the wizard's theme is actually what you should be pursuing, or where it's not. I don't think that white black is a bad deck by any means. I just don't think that it should be called sacrifice.
Yeah,
I think it should be called mid-range black white attrition value thing. But that doesn't sound as sexy as sacrifice, does it? It probably is more effective if you look at the Magic's history, though. All right, let's move to the next one.
Wait.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to just also call out there's this uncommon called Gaius van Baelsar. He's a 4-mana 3/2 that makes both players like sack a guy, something like a creature token and a non-token creature or an enchantment. That's probably also would be pretty good in this deck as well.
Yeah, and the fact that you can make it disproportionate if they play the saga.
Yep.
And you don't have one, it's also neat.
Yeah, or make them sack a creature token if you don't have any.
Yeah, or just make sack creatures as well, and then get a bonus from, because when you're sacking, you get actual bonus from. Okay, Town Ramp is the blue-green theme. I mean, here it's quite clear from all the cards. This one looks clearly like, yes, this is going to be a ramp deck, and with all the caveats of a ramp deck. Ignisciencia, we already mentioned. That's a 3-mana signpost. It's a 2/2. When it enters, you look up 6 cards of your library, and you find a land from those, and you put it on the battlefield tapped. And it has an ability of exiling things from the graveyard. If you exile a creature, you make food, which is a nice add-on. But I think the main value of the card is just like 3-mana 2/2 that ramps you. Then you have Omega Heartless Evolution. That's a 7-mana 8/8. Artifact creature, legendary also. This is like a juicy target for Suplex. When it enters, for each opponent, so for one opponent in our case, you tap 1 permanent and put X stun counters on it and gain X life, where X is the number of non-basic lands you control. So even if it's only 3, that's basically killing a creature, especially given the fact that there's an 8/8 staring at you right now. A 7 mana shouldn't be too much for the ramp deck, so both of those look pretty good to me. And you have like a bunch of enablers for the ramp. You have the Precious Wanderings we mentioned, the instant speed, put a basic land or town into the battlefield, and then a counter, +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. Reach the Horizon, just ramp for 2, so you can go turn 4, Reach the Horizon, turn 5, Omega Heartless Evolution, and you could have put 2 towns with the Reach of the Horizon, so that the Omega Heartless Evolution is going to basically kill something. You have the Fenrir, the 3/2 Saga Wolf that ramps you by 1 land. So tons of the things that enable it. And there are some bonuses for ramp. I think one is travel the overworld. Those decks usually have a problem that you put ramp in your deck, you put early interactions to survive, you put some top end, and you have to have lands. And then you sort of like do the thing, you ramp, and the moment you ramp, you are with nothing. And travel the overworld is like 7 mana for a draw 4 cards, but it has affinity for towns. So if you just 3 towns on board, and all of a sudden it starts costing 4 mana. So 4 mana to draw 4 is pretty good, right? And 4 cards should keep you fueled for the later game. There are things like Gigantode, 4 mana, 4/4, weirdly without reach. I don't know how this creature doesn't have reach, but I'm happy that it doesn't. And as long as you control 7 or more lands, this creature gets +2/+2. And
way too big to jump. It's way too big to jump.
maybe, but it's the tongue that is supposed to give them reach, no? At least that's what I always thought, is that they don't have to jump. They just sit there and they get things from the sky. The bigger, the easier for them to technically get the tongue out and catch a dragon or something. Anyway, then there are also things like Ultra's Obnoxious Octopus, which is not really a payoff for ramp itself, because it's a 2/1 for 2 mana. But if you cast an 8 mana spell, which there are a couple of, and so happen to be in blue and in green, you put 8 +1/+1 counters on it. So I think it's a nice thing to have this cheap early creature that gets some kind of a bonus when you cast 4 mana spells, like Reach Horizon, for example. They tap something and stun it that lets you survive till the later game. And then once you get to your full ramp, you can cast something for 8 mana and get this majestically huge 10/9 toad and win the game through that. And there's, like, I think very important card in the format is the Balamp T-Rexor. That's 4 green for a 6/6 with trample. When it enters, you gain 3 life, and it's got forest cycling for 2 mana. I think that if there is anything that a ramp deck wants more, tell me. But I think that this is a perfect card for that particular archetype. It don't have lands, you get lands. You have lands, you get a 6/6, you gain some life. Happy times. And yeah, there are a couple of other things like Kikirn Merchant, 3 mana 1/4, good to make you survive till the late game, especially against those X1s flying around. It loots for 1 mana, and then for 7 mana you can tap and sacrifice it, draw 3 cards, and this ability costs 1 less to activate for each town you control. Notably, this is not a sorcery ability, so you can just like randomly sacrifice it at the end of your turn to get more fuel for your deck. Any thoughts on those?
No thoughts.
No, all they have is no thoughts. Who's doing this one? Sam, is that yours?
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Take it away.
Yeah, so this is a pretty straightforward towns deck. You can see I included 2 black cards because I think specifically in the towns deck, it's going to be pretty free to splash. And the green interaction is a punch spell, which is not going to be at its best in a ramp deck. So I think specifically splashing like Sephiroth's Intervention, which is 4 mana, destroy target creature, gain 2, is going to be really good. Also, a lot of like something like Thunder Magic in red would be really good as well. And yeah, this is just like a kind of just pile of blue and green cards with some good signposts. I think a lot of the signposts, you see I have 3 cards, including 2 signposts, are really strong to splash. I have a more ambitious 5-color one in the other deck skeletons that uses Blitzball as well, which is, I know this is like a kind of a land ramp strategy, but I think Blitzball works well there too, especially if your interaction like Thunder Magic is 1 mana. But yeah, just some of the cards is like Town Greeter, I think is so important for this deck. The finding an extra land. We just saw Enoch Wayfarer in the last set. be a really good card. This digs 1 deeper and can gain you life at the cost of not getting a counter, which was a pretty irrelevant mode of Wayfarer in a lot of decks. Yeah, it's just very straightforward. I think the land cyclers are good. This skeleton has both Balamb, T Rexor, and Ice Flawn. I think Ice Flawn actually looks decent. It's like a variation on like Bergstrider, Frostlinks, Tap and Sun something. I think it's a 5/4.
I'll take Bergstrider.
Yeah,
Much better reference.
Yeah. So yeah, I have Kikurin Merchant as well as another key card. I think 4 toughness looks pretty good because it dodges suplex as well as Vane's treachery and stuff. And then the other key cards that I pulled out were, yeah, Prisha's Wanderings. Also, this one is going to depend, I think, on your 2-drops, specifically Scorpion Sentinel, which is a 2-mana 1/4 artifact creature that turns into a 4/4 if you have, I think, 7 lands. If you can go 2-mana 1/4 into turn 3 Prisha's Wanderings, put a counter on it. Now it's a 2/5, and then you untap next turn with 5 mana.
Now you're selling me. I mean,
yeah.
If you can get a horseshoe crab that early, whew.
Yeah. I put Thunder Magic. Yeah, this is the other variant I had. This is a more ambitious version where you're splashing a Thunder Magic, the red-green signpost, both of the black signposts, still a Sephiroth's Intervention. I think you can get pretty ambitious, especially because I think almost all of the green signposts look good, and a lot of them are very desirable to splash as well. And not only are you getting a bunch of the dual land towns, but you also get like the village. You might play a colorless land in this type of deck. The gain 2 land looks decent if you want a little bit more life buffer, especially if you're closer to like a mono green and then kind of just splashing everything else deck.
Yeah, especially when you can find it with the Precious Wanderings. If you have 1 utility land and you know that you have all your colors done, you just might as well go for a utility land there. Did you think about introducing like a better pronounced Golgari package into it? Because once you play Town Greeters and you mill yourself, you will have permanent cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, I think you can approach that from the other direction.
You might start thinking Diamond Weapon and
you could be base black green and just be splashing Omega and even Ignis. I think that would be completely reasonable as well, especially because black gives you Vane's Treachery as a cheap interactive spell as well.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested in how those multicolor town decks are going to be playing out, because theirs can be also like a legend theme version of it with Blitzballs caring about legends and the white green signposts caring about legends and making them cheaper and buffing them.
Especially because the signposts, the green ones all look very good and splashable. So you're going to end up with a lot of legends in your deck if you're like a green multicolor deck.
No octopus though.
Yeah, I didn't put that one in here, but it would fit for sure. Especially because something like Ice Magic scales up to 4 mana. Or something like Retrieve the Esper.
Ice Magic scales to 8 mana. I'd like to remind you.
It does, yeah. You could make your 9/8 octopus.
The Dream. What 9/8? 10.
10/8 octopus.
Oh, it's a
10/9.
Oh yeah, it's a 10/9. Yeah.
No one will escape the grasp of the 10/9 octopus. I tell you that already now. Oh yeah, and this is the black splash that you.
More just. I think both.
What do you think about the Retrieve the Esper? I'm interested about that card.
Yeah,
it looks terrible on raid because it's a 4 mana, make a 3/3, so Hill Giant.
Well, it's a Hill Giant that draws a card. It draws a bad card.
It draws a 6 mana 5/5.
Yeah, which I'm not sold on that card in the Towns deck. I think it's pretty good in blue-white, which cares about artifacts, or maybe blue-black that can mill it.
Oh, it's an artifact creature. Okay,
it ties all of them together. It's a
I think it's not bad also in the blue-red, no?
Yeah, because it's 2 triggers. I think it's probably at its worst in this deck because I think you're gonna have so much to spend your mana on. But I think it's a fine playable, especially if you have the 2 mana ramper. It's a pretty good thing to play on turn 3.
Okay.
It's going to be good too in those decks. I mean, where the more you care about your creatures coming from non-creature spells, the better that's going to be. I mean, the sad part is that there's a lot of that in black-red, and I don't know how Grixis you're going to want to get in there, but that's another place to pay attention to that too.
Yeah, I think again, I can think of this deck as a sort of like White Legend themed Temur. 4 mana spells matter. There's plenty of shells that you can fit in this Simic kind of backbone, I guess, because the green provides you with lands, and then whatever synergy you can get from other colors, you can add if you have the right towns for that. And I think, yeah, again, the village, the one that comes into top, and you can choose a color, that's going to be essential for those decks to work. And then, however lucky you are with opening those dual towns, is going to be also pretty defining for what you can do.
The uncommon filter town is also going to be pretty strong for this too.
Yeah,
because a lot of times, like those grotto lands are better for splashing cheap interaction. So like in Wilds of Eldraine, you were using the grotto to splash torch the tower a lot of times in like a blue-black deck or something like that, or a blue-green deck or something. Or in Outlaws, you were splashing cheap red spells in your blue-black crimes deck. Like just the tacking on an extra mana works better on cheap spells than expensive spells. So if you're in this kind of like multicolor thing and your cheap spells are interaction, I think that card's going to be pretty good, and maybe even better than the enters tapped choose a color town.
Yeah, I also think that looking at the mana base for this set, I think it's a better mana base for 5 colors than for 3 colors somehow. Because yeah, filter land, that's great for 5 colors. The fact that you can fetch towns that are wildly divergent in terms of what colors they give you might be good for 5 colors deck, but not necessarily for a stringent 3 color when you want to have a consistent mana base for the 3 colors. So that's going to be interesting. How much 5 color can you go into it? Okay, let's. Any other thoughts on the towns?
Yeah, so the cool thing about the blue-green towns deck is that if you get the rare town, you can probably see it every single game, like the blue-green rare town. So that's like another searchable finisher kind of thing that you'll just have.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, the fact that you can search up the towns is huge, and there's so many ways of doing that. Okay, Golgari Graveyard Value, shocking archetype, never seen before. We talked about the signpost, the X Death, the 3/3 that gains you 3 and then can flip into an X3. And there is also Cloud of Darkness, 2 black, green, flying. And when it enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. And it's a 3/3 flyer. Both of them look pretty good to me. Obviously, both of them need some building around. I think that when I was looking at the cards for this particular deck, one issue I had that apart from the town greeter, is it? Yeah, apart from town greeter and a couple of cards that I'm not sure if I want to be playing that frequently, not so much self-mill in this format. And normally the way you fill your graveyard with permanents is self-mill. There is Shinran Reinforcements. That's a 3 mana 2/3 that mills 3 and you gain 3 life when it enters. I think that the gain 3 on that is a redeeming quality because without it, the card would not just be good on rate, I think. But because it gives you 3 life, that's acceptable. There's also Resentful Revelation. That's 1 and a black. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So basically a color-shifted strategic planning, if I'm not mistaken. But it also has Flashback for 7, so quite a big upgrade on that. But those cards are not always playable in Limited, so I'm not sure if this one is going to be.
We had this card in Modern Horizons 1. I think it was Ransack the Lab, but it didn't have Flashback. So
okay,
strict upgrade on a
wow, strict upgrade on the Modern Horizons. But yeah,
This
Modern
is,
Horizons 1.
Kind of like Forbidden Alchemy, if any of you guys remember that one.
Yep.
From
that
the
was recently on
Innistrad.
Arena.
Yeah, it was in the Innistrad remaster.
Oh yeah, that was there. Yeah, okay, that's where I played it. Yeah,
that looked at 4, but like this is still pretty good, I would think. 2 mana is a lot less than 3.
That's true. And I thought that, like saga creatures are actually enablers for that, because you play them, they go to the graveyard at some stage, which means that they will have permanence in your graveyard while accruing some value from the saga thing. So they are sort of like a round way of having an enabler for that. And then I thought, yeah, there are some maybe things that can overlap between this and the sacrifice deck. That's why I put the Graha Tia. I think that card would be pretty decent in this kind of deck. That's the 3/5. Whenever a creature dies, you draw a card, because you want to have some kind of a card advantage engine that rewards you for what you want to be doing, therefore putting permanent cards in your graveyard. And this is the archetype that has the dream of melding two cards together in Fang and Vanille. When you have both of those, you can pay 5 mana and exile them, and you get a 7/6 that has haste, trample, something, probably death touch. It's big and it's fast, and it goes straight face. So that's an interesting. But Vanilla and Fang are also the two cards that you probably want to have in your deck anyway, because Vanilla mills 2 cards and you can return a permanent from a graveyard to your hand. So, like, dare I say, a better Gravedigger already on rate, which is not terrible. And Fang, when cards leave your graveyard, you may draw a card and lose 1 life. So all your filling the graveyard will probably be accompanied with graveyard recursion, like Phyton, which allows you to return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then you get some bonuses from that. Who built the Gold Garbage?
I did.
Yeah, let's talk us through.
So this is kind of just like a mill yourself deck, and then like gets paid off for milling yourself with the expensive top end kind of things. Like Diamond Weapon will discount itself. But the main enablers for this strategy that you get in black are Shinra Reinforcements and Resentful Revelation. Both of them let you look at a lot of cards, put a lot of cards in your graveyard. And also Town Greeters here as well,
yeah.
Which is 4 cards is a lot. Like Satyr Wayfinder was already pretty good, and this one lets you even get 1 more. So, and then Resentful Revelation being 2 mana, really nice way to put a bunch of cards in your graveyard, and then get some late game value, and turn on like your Diamond Weapon and your Clouds of Darkness.
Yeah, I think one thing I miss from it is that some better versions of permanent based removal in black and green.
Yeah,
like there is maybe the side quest.
Yeah,
but that costs 5 mana, so that's a bit problematic.
Yeah, and it's like you can just play Cloud of Darkness if you're in this deck. That'll probably kill most things.
Yeah, Deadweight would have been really good.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Deadweight would have been excellent. Yeah,
Especially
Tithing Blade would have also been pretty sweet.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, Cloud of Darkness is, I think, a very important card in that deck, because if you spend first couple of turns milling yourself, you definitely want to make sure that you kill something big with it, and also the 3/3 body will be good enough to block whatever you didn't kill.
Yeah, it's a pretty important way to like recoup tempo when you're playing like a Bitter Revelation or like Resentful Revelation, Town Greeters, Shinra Reinforcements, like these slightly below rate cards. Although there's a pretty good chance Town Greeters will trade for your opponent's Piker, which is nice. But like, you want to be able to recoup your board presence by playing Cloud of Darkness, and then like Rain's Treachery, also pretty important early removal spell for the deck to make sure it doesn't fall too far behind and is able to still get to cast like its big payoffs, like, the Diamond Weapons, the Cloud of Darknesses. And then you can like vanilla your stuff back as well, which is also pretty nice.
What do you think about Genova, the rare that you put in? I think it's one of the better cards in the format, no? I mean,
yeah, I think it's just really strong. You get a counter. I don't think if you like Evil Reawaken the Genova, then it gets like really insane, because then it has 3 power. So you can
So basically, what Genova does is just Genova at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to Genova's power on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes a mutant, and when a mutant you control dies during your turn, you draw cards equal to its power. So at base already, it's Luminarch Aspirant that is a 1/5 cost 4 mana, obviously. But then everything that has a counter from it dies, you draw a bunch of cards. And of course, there are ways of making its power bigger. I'm actually thinking about the tiered spell in black on Genova,
Yeah,
making
would
it
also
5/2, going to attack, putting 5 counters on something. Fun times.
I mean,
It
putting
looks-
one
it looks
counter
absolute-
on
that's
a
a good reason to be Golgari. Like, even if you don't like what Golgari has to offer in this format, I would probably dip my toes if I opened the Genova.
putting one counter on Egg's Death and then sacking it to like Vane's Treachery, like after blocks, or like after it deals damage. That's a lot of cards. You know, like if you flip Egg's Death, like
Yeah, you
that's
might
like at least 7
actually
cards. You
run
might
into
deck yourself.
trouble of milling yourself.
Yeah,
So you will have to start dumping all the counters on one creature at a certain stage because, or sacrifice Genova before you actually have to draw your library.
good thing the
Well-
LMT Rex has trample.
The fact that you might, that you're going to be milling so much in this deck might be a really good home for Elixir too. Being able to just dump your graveyard.
Elixir is the one that returns non-land permanents to your library.
Yeah.
I really like how kind they are. That keep the lands out. Yeah, that's fine. Lands can stay in the graveyard. No
Yeah, I mean, that could be a significant reload. And one other comment I want to make here too, back to Cloud of Darkness for a minute. I mean, just think about, you look at, 3/3 flyer for 5 mana that does something, right? I mean, we've had recent sets where 3/3 mana or 3/3 flyer for 5 mana, like black card that drains for 3 is a viable card in the format, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, I mean, this is potentially kill something really big. It's the fact that it's dealing -X, it's getting around a bunch of indestructible stuff. I mean, like having even 2 Cloud of Darknesses like you have here, plus any ability to recur them ever is just, I mean, it's going to be such a devastating feeling when it's like, I have a 3/3 flyer and your biggest thing is dead. It's going to be a pretty impactful 5 mana play.
Mm. What else do you have there? Oh yeah, of course you have the Fang and Vanille combo. I mean, obviously, that's another reason to draft Golgari. That's probably one of the reasons why it's going to be slightly overdrafted in the first days, because people love the idea of melding things.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're both really good cards, good to curve into each other. Although I think Vanille's a bit better than Fang. Like,
Yeah, Vanille is like way better,
Like, way better.
in my books at least.
yeah, but it's nice to curve them into each other, and you can do some fun stuff with the meld. Like Ragnarok will kill your opponents pretty fast.
The fact
That's
that they're
true.
both uncommon, has it ever happened? If not, it's been quite a while that we've had a meld that doesn't involve a rare at some point. Like we've had a rare and a common or something like that, but 2 uncommons
But that's fine.
There's,
That's great. It adds something to the format
Right.
that is realistic,
pretty
but it doesn't overload it with like 17 meld creatures. So
Eldritch Moon had a common and an uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Eldritch Moon had 2 commons. They upshifted Midnight Scavengers. It was a common.
All right, Grandpas. All right.
Swapped them.
Isn't it past your
Maybe it was
bedtime?
common. Maybe it was common.
I'm pretty. I doubt they shifted Graph Rats to. I doubt Graph Rats was ever an uncommon. There's no way.
This podcast has been sponsored by Innistrad Travel Board. Innistrad, don't travel there.
But yeah, like Vanille obviously is just like mills a bunch of cards. Real good.
I do like that there's not that many ways to recur, but between Vanille, Evil, Reawakened, and Fight On, there's that's a decent amount of ways in black green to replay the same card over and over. And I think like Cloud of Darkness is a really good one. The land cyclers put themselves in the graveyard, and also the saga creatures put themselves in the graveyard, which might not be relevant for something like Fat Chocobo, but the Summon Fenrir is one that'll go to the graveyard on turn 5, and then you can Evil Reawaken that back immediately, which might be really relevant, or like Fight On and get all the value again.
Yeah, that's why I put Summon Primal Odin in here. Like, he's a pretty
Classic.
good one to get
Yeah,
back.
yeah, that one too. Yeah, it is like the sagas being creatures means the reanimation is really good.
Classic Magic players. Repetitive play patterns are awful for the game. Here is how you can do it. All right. Next archetype we have is Izzet, big non-creatures, and the idea for the archetype is that if you pay, by the way, such a good design choice, because mana value thing, we know that it's flawed. You cannot put if something has mana value of 5 or more, because then it leads to whatever up the beanstalk is up to nowadays. If you spend 4 mana or more on a spell, you get a certain effect. You have to spend the mana. If you spend 3 mana on that spell, doesn't work. You spend 4, correct. You get your bonus. If they printed that text, if you spend 5 or more mana on something on up the beanstalk, it would be costing 20p as it should, and no one would ever play it in any constructed format as they should, and the card would not be a problem. And we have the Emperor of Palamecia, which is 2 mana 2/2. It taps for blue or red, but you can only spend it to cast non-creature spells. And when you cast a non-creature spell, if at least 4 mana was spent on it, put a +1/+1 counter on the Emperor of Palamecia. Then if it has 3 or more counters, it flips into a 3/3. But of course, it's a 6/6 because there's 3 counters on it, and it does things. I'm not going to guess what's on the other side. And we have Shantotto, Tactician Magician, 1 blue red for an 0/4. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Shantotto gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. If X is 4 or more, draw a card. Great little dude that lets you draw some cards, can become a beater if you have the right spell, and synergizes with what the thing is trying to do all through. And here it's really hard to say what are the payoffs and what are the enablers. You want to be casting spells that cost 4 mana. So I put Retrieve the Esper, that's a 4 mana, make a 3/3 robot, and then you can flash it back for 6. So you got 2 spells that you will pay 4 or more mana for. Is it a woman? That should be Shantotta then.
This mistress in the flavor text.
Cannot they stick to Italian grammar? Damn it. Right, back on track. Sort of draws you two spells and allows you to cast those 2 spells. Then there's Thunder Magic. The problem with the casting big non-creature spells is that you need those early interaction spells. And Thunder Magic is perfect because it's for red, it's a shock, but you can spell 4 mana and it deals 4 damage. So if you need to kill something early, by all means do that. If you don't need to kill something early, you got a spell later that will trigger your synergies. And then you just have like great 4 mana spells like Eject, 4 mana instant, cannot be countered, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. By the way, if you don't think it's great, it's great. And it's going to be great, and it's going to be underplayed, and you're going to pick it late and be happy about it because people will not recognize how awesome that card is. Bouncing something with a card draw, good. Make the notes. And then you have like other spells that could be useful for you. There's a couple of those 2-drops. And by the way, so important in my opinion that those things are 2-drops because you can cast them early, and then once you start casting 4 mana spells, they will start accruing the value. You have Sahagin, that's a 2 mana 1/3. When you spend 4 or more mana on the spell, you put a counter on it, and it's also unblockable that turn. So that can slowly start growing and keeping you alive. And at some stage of the game, you might actually start swinging with it when it's going to be big and unblockable. And then there's Ultras, the Obnoxious Octopus. Again, 2 mana 2/1. When you spend 4 mana on a spell, you tap a creature and put a stun counter on it, which is like a great upgrade on any spell that you have. Hey, my spell also taps one of your things and stuns it for a turn. And then when you spend 8 mana, it becomes the 10/9 giant octopus thingy. That will finish the game. And you have Prompto Argentum. That's a 2 mana 2/2 haste, which is already, this is a great stat line again. And when you cast a non-creature spell, if 4 mana was spent, you create a treasure token. So you ramp yourself to more expensive spells in the future. And then you have things like Syncopate that you can spend 4 mana on, but also you can spend 2 mana on, which is, again, a modality that is quite useful early and late. And Dreams of Laguna, that is basically a cycling spell. 2 mana, you surveil and draw a card, but it has flashback for 4, so that flashback cost will trigger the abilities of the spells that you have. And who was the builder of this? Springbok, was it you?
Yeah, it was me.
Take it away.
So this one, I just want to talk about like Ice Magic as a tiered spell that lets you trigger both your 4 and 8 mana cards. Like your 4 and 8 mana non-creature payoffs. Your Ultros, your Shantotos, your Emperor Palamishas, and also you can just cast it for 2 mana if you need to. Triggers Tella as well if you want to deal 8 damage to your opponent, which will be pretty sweet if that happens. But all in all, I think it's just Ice Magic's a really good enabler, as is Thunder Magic, and the tiered cards in general. And I also want to talk about Warrior's Sword as kind of like the representative for stuff like Retrieve the Esper, as well as 4 mana non-creature spells in quotation marks that are creatures. So they trigger your synergies and also allow you to affect the board really nicely. And then here we have the payoffs. We have Ultros. We've talked a lot about Ultros already, which is kind of surprising to me, but I think he's pretty nice. You can play your 4 mana non-creature spells like Warrior Sword or your tiered things and tap something down. That's a pretty nice bonus. And then Shantoto obviously just gives you a bunch of cards, gets really big, and is like a pretty threatening creature because it's got 4 toughness. It's pretty hard to kill like on curve or for like a mana advantage. So it's really like a pretty sturdy payoff, especially since blue has Magic Tamper as well to protect it, which is like a shore up variant. So both of these creatures, I think, are cheap and will play out pretty well in games that they survive. And Shantoto is pretty hard to kill as well. And then here we have some other payoffs, like Palamisia ramps you and is also like a payoff for like just having like a large density of non-creature spells that go to the graveyard on the backside, where it deals damage equal to the number of non-creature spells that you have in the graveyard to each opponent and when it attacks. And Rama deals damage equal to the number of non-creature non-land spells in your graveyard to target creature and opponent controls on the first chapter, which is already pretty good. Like we've seen cards like this in the past, like Warfire Javelineer, and these cards are really good if you can build around them and deal a bunch of damage to a creature. And then also this is just like a nice value creature.
Yeah, and of course you have the Choco Comet, my favorite card of the set, as you can do all the analysis that you want to be doing, spend 5 hours trying to figure out the sizing of the creatures and write a thread about it, and then you get 4 likes. Or you can just write, "Ooh, Choco Comet, that thing busted," and then you get like 1,000 likes. That's how social media works. I highly recommend that type of life. Just write that things are busted, and then they're going to be format breaking, and people will like it because I don't know why.
You did your analysis. I think I'm actually higher on Choco Comet than I was before because there's so many X ones. You can just do it for 3 and then ping something. Like
that is a good point, and it is also true, which is important. But then you don't spend 4 mana on it, so
sometimes you got to kill your opponent's stuff in order to not die.
All right, red-white, quite untypically, is an aggro archetype. But this time, you put swords in their hands, not only creatures, but they need to hold something in their hand. And 2 signposts we discussed, Zinedine Zidane, Tantalus Thief, 5 mana for a 3/3. When it enters, gain control of target creature and opponent controls until end of turn. Untap it, it gains lifelink and haste until end of turn. Whenever an opponent gains control of a permanent from you, you create a treasure token. That's a bit weird, but okay. I'll take it. Sort of top-end aggressive, I guess. You take away their big blocker and you smash. And you have Jot, King of the Dwarves, white-red for a 1/1 double striker. When Jot or another dwarf you control enters, and whenever an equipment you control enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And these point to aggression of certain side. You have the enablers, and enablers here will be your equipment, like Dragoon's Lance. That's a 2 mana equipment that makes a 1/1 and equips itself, and the equipped creature gets +1/+0, is a knight, and during your turn also has flying. Or Warrior Sword that we mentioned, the 4 mana, make a 1/1, give it +3/+2. But also, I think one of the enablers is Freya Crescent, red for a 1/1. It has flying during your turn, which is actually a neat skill. And you can tap it for red, and then you can spend mana that you got from there only to cast an equipment or activate an equip ability. So it allows you to ramp into your more expensive equipments a bit earlier. Then I think that one of the key cards that I see in this is Weapons Vendor for mana 2/2 Human Artificer, which might come in handy for some other things. So good I put it twice on this slide. There you go. When it enters, you draw a card, and at the beginning of your combat, you may pay 1 mana to attach target equipment you control to target creature you control. We talked about how the equip costs are expensive in this set, and this is not only like a 4 mana 2/2 that draws a card, which is not terrible, but also something that will let you equip this warrior sword and without spending 5 mana, but with spending only 1. And with Jot, King of the Dwarves, double striker, that is pretty useful to put +3/+2 on it, in my opinion. And then I thought of by the way, I know what was supposed to be there instead of the second Weapons Vendor. There is the 2/1 that dies into a 1/1. And if I remember correctly from Kaldheim, this type of creature is absolutely perfect with equipment type decks, because you equip it, it's a 2/1, you attack. Because it's equipped, it's bigger. Opponent needs to start dealing with it. Yes, thank you, Baskir Shieldmate. Opponent has to deal with it. Once they deal with it, you got another 1/1, re-equip. And all those things are only possible or are much easier when you have Weapons Vendor, and you can actually re-equip for cheaps rather than pay those 5/4 mana that is tagged on to those job select creatures. And that's why the same reason why Aerith Rescue Mission, I think, is pretty useful. Creating 3 1/1s and then just equipping them and starting sending them is going to be hard for the opponent to deal with. And also, if you already have a good board, you can use the top 3 creatures and stun one of them, and you win the race through that by just clearing the way for you. In terms of payoffs, Adalbert Steiner is technically a payoff. It's a 2/1 lifelinker for 2, and it gets +1/+1 for each equipment you control. So you don't need to equip it, just have equipment and it gets bigger. But also if you equip it, it's even bigger, and you got lifelink, so it's great for racing. Item Shopkeep, 2 mana 2/2. Whenever you attack, target attacking equipped creature gains menace until end of turn. That's, again, if you're going to be sending those big power creatures into your opponent, adding menace onto them is really a pain for the opponent to solve. And there's Slash of Light, 2 mana instant, deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control plus the number of equipment you control to target creature. So if you have a bunch of those job select equips, they count as 2 things for the purpose of the Slash of Light. And also, if you have enough equipments, you are less likely that you're going to draw it on an empty board and do nothing with it, because you may have like 1 or 2 equipments lying around it and can still kill something. Is it you again, Springbok? Yeah, it
Yep,
is.
it's me.
Right, go on with that one.
So here we have, I'm just going to talk about the signposts really quick. So Giot, obviously really good if you have a bunch of equipment, good to put equipment on, lets you loot with equipment, is a really efficient 2-drop. You're going to want it in this deck. And Zidane is an excellent aggro top end card. Steals something, he steals a creature, you get lifelink and haste. So if you're racing, that's a really large swing. Then you have 3/3. And both of these cards point very strongly towards the idea that red-white wants to attack and wants to be aggressive. There's a lot of also like flying on your turn stuff when Freya Crescent and Dragoon's Lance. So red-white very much wants to be racing and be aggressive, and these kind of cards can really help you like swing the race in your favor. And then these cards are just solid common creatures in the case of Ifrit and White Mage's Staff. But White Mage's Staff, very solid common equipment. Again, if you're like racing and attacking, this gains you life. It's a 2/2, which is nice. No, there aren't that many 2/2s. It's good to get buffed. And then also the GF Ifrit, again, along with Giot, you get access to a lot of like cards selection, lots of discard and draw, which is pretty nice. You get to go through, so you're at much less risk of flooding out than you might otherwise be, which is pretty nice. And then here we have Steiner and Weapons Vendor, both cards that really pay you off for having a lot of job select creatures. Like Steiner gets really big life linker, and then Weapons Vendor can really help you like move your Samurai's Katanas onto your Giot or onto Steiner itself. Like those cards, like that'll get in for a lot of life linking damage, or a lot of double striking damage. Can really help you swing a race. And you can also move like your Dragoon's lands onto Giot or Steiner and give them evasion. There's a lot of things you can do with the Weapons Vendor in this archetype. And also Weapons Vendor plus like the summon GF Ifrit and Giot means that red-white sees a lot more cards than you might otherwise expect from an aggro deck. You'll be able to get through a surprising amount of your deck if you're playing this color pair.
So you're not gonna cover the elephant in the room.
I thought that was a specific slide, but yes, we were talking
is there
about
a specific slide? No, there is no.
I'm not sure. There isn't. I thought we had made one. Okay, but yeah. So another really important thing that you can do with this deck is Winota. So Winota, Joiner of Forces, says whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, you may look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may put a hero creature from among them, or a human creature from among them, tapped and attacking, and it gains indestructible. And then that works really well with your job select cards because those are heroes; they are not humans. So if you play like a bunch of job select cards, you can play Giot. You can play your summons are also not humans. You can pretty easily go like Freya Crescent, a job select card, Ifrit, Winota, like swing with 3 creatures. You can try to flip Zidane, you can flip Gilgamesh, you can flip Adalbert Steiner. Like these hits aren't even like the most amazing. Like one of my friends constructed a deck that was flashing green, so you could hit like Rinoa and Gladiolus off of it, which would also be pretty insane. But even in just red-white, hitting Zidane, hitting Steiner, swinging for like a bunch of additional damage really is quite strong. And this isn't the alchemy Winota. This is unnerfed Winota. So you're really getting your money's worth, and like it doesn't even require that much building around. Like a lot of the cheap early plays for this deck are just non-creatures or just non-humans. So
if you open it in paper, you're literally getting your money's worth. I think.
Is Winota expensive?
Probably in this version it will be because they are rare. Yeah. And you will get the Final Fantasy collector's credit. I think I checked the prices there, of course, pretty rubbish right now, but Ristic study because obviously there is a Ristic study there. I think it's £100 for a normal version. So you're well advised to pick those in your paper drafts.
The other thing with red-white equipment, specifically with Weapons Vendor, is like you have so much looting, or I guess just the whole deck. You have so much looting between Giot and GF Ifrit that it feels like it's gonna be hard to run out of stuff to spend mana on. So the mana from Weapons Vendor and GF Ifrit looks like it plays pretty perfectly here, especially because a lot of the equip costs are pretty hefty.
Yep, makes sense.
Obviously, Gilgamesh is just like insane in this deck. So enters or attacks, and you can flip him off Winota. Like you probably.
I think that there are plenty of like solid rares in this format that could be replaced there, and you wouldn't even feel that bad about it. There's the 3/4 that gives double strike when you attack with one creature. That tends to be good with equipped creatures, I guess.
Yeah, there's also a 3/3 on the bonus sheet for 4 mana that does that. That does it when it enters or attacks. So
yeah, there you go. Okay, green go wide. Well, lots of the things are similar in there. But let's focus on the signpost. So first signpost is Garnet, Princess of Alexandria. That is definitely a female character there, unless I'm mistaken yet again. Green-white for a 2/2 lifelinker, which is already good. When it attacks, you may remove a lore counter from each of any number of sagas you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on Garnet for each lore counter removed that way. Which I think that curving this into Fenrir is going to be very fun for someone. Then you have Rinoa Hartley, 3 white, green for human 4/4. When it enters, create Angelo, a legendary 1/1 green and white dog creature token. And that whenever Rinoa Hartley attacks another target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature you control. So even if it's the only thing on board, Angelo will get +2/+2. So pretty good swing turn after you cast her. Enablers I selected. Ares Rescue Mission, that makes 3 1/1s. Good for going wide. Magitech Armor, it's a vehicle that makes a 1/1 hero when it enters and it's got crew 1. So sort of go on Tresio or Springbok. Which card I'm missing from Ether Drift?
Broadcast Rambler.
Broadcast Rambler, there you
That
go.
one.
And then, of course, summon Fat Chocobo. That also makes multiple bodies. It's a 5-mana 4/4 saga bird. And when it enters, it creates a 2/2 bird with landfall thing for birds. So these allow you to put multiple bodies on board. There's other things like the Crystal's Chosen. That's like enabler and a payoff. 7 mana is a lot, but it makes 4 1/1s. And then you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, which is a ton. So I don't know how you're going to ramp to 7, but you definitely, if you can, then you want to do it. There's cards like Riddler's Return, and that's a 5-mana sorcery, and you choose one. Creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn, and then you can also return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Like, problem with Overrun sometimes is that you draw it and you don't have anything on board, and this solves it by allowing you to get back things and put them on board again. So solves one problem that Overrun has. Obviously, it's not as good as Overrun because it doesn't give trample, but still does look like a solid card if you go wide, and most of the time you will have a wide board. And there is the Quina Ku Gourmet, legendary creature Ku, which is a new creature type, I guess, that never was there before. I like new creature types. And if one or more tokens would be created under your control, you make an extra green frog 1/1 on top of whatever you were making. And you can also sacrifice a frog and you put a +1/+1 counter on Quina. That's a 2/3. So that's another kind of enabler / payoff for making more tokens. And then you have some cards that will be benefiting from having wide boards. Snowvilliers, that's 2 and a white for an X3 with vigilance, and its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. So sort of like Zergo's Vanguard. See, I remember some card names. Doesn't mobilize, but vigilance is something, I guess. Slash of Light, that's the removal that deals as much damage as you have creatures and equipment. Here, the creature part is going to be more relevant in this deck. And you have Summon Choco / Mog, 3 mana 3/3 saga creature, and all the chapters, and 4 of them are there. Say other creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So all your 1/1s become much harder threats to deal with all of a sudden. So these are the types of cards that might enable the go wide archetype. And who do we have making the go wide deck?
This was my skeleton, and this is another one where, just like black white, I don't think you need to be go wide for green white. I think you can just play a lot of good cards and just kind of build very normal Magic the Gathering limited deck. There definitely are go wide payoffs, like the Aerith Rescue Mission is one. There's the Rally the Peasants variant that's like the Trumpet Blast. I think overall the key cards for green white, Summon Fat Chocobo reads really strong to me. It's a green card that makes 2 bodies. It sticks around for 2 attack steps. We also have Ambrosia Whiteheart here. The one on the screen here is a little more leaning into Garnet, into the sagas, with the Summon Chocomog, Summon Fat Chocobo. Ambrosia Whiteheart is the 2 mana 2/2 flash Chocobo that picks something up when it enters. So you can pick up both your equipment or your sagas to retrigger those. I think all that's sort of like the green white. I think pulls, if you ignore the go wide, it ties together a lot of the different mechanics in the set, like sagas, equipment, etc. In a way where I think you can just get away by playing good cards.
And I think that this one also can have like thousands of sub builds. As I said, legends definitely, but I think that if you open the right rares, there is a lifelink or life gain kind of deck that will fit very well into this thing. There can be bases for multicolor as well. I mean, I think that white green offers a lot of sub builds that will be hard to figure out in the first weeks.
One of the things I wanted to mention too, both for playing in paper and playing online with the saga creatures, is it is very, I mean, like Fat Chocobo is one of the rare exceptions, because if you look at the bottom of the card, it only has flavor text. It is very, very easy to miss on the card because you have all the information about the saga. It's very easy to miss keywords that are attached to the creature at the bottom of the card. I found myself when preparing for this numerous times not noticing, oh, this thing has trample and haste, or oh, this thing has vigilance and reach, or something like that. I think it's just kind of a public service announcement. Like, players are going to have to, I mean, not obviously it's a totally new card type with saga creatures, but I think that text is going to be very easy to miss.
Yep, that's definitely. I read a couple of them and I didn't notice that they actually fly because they were not blue. And my brain only looks for flying when things are blue because I'm a simple creature.
Yeah, the one that has indestructible is like, please pay attention.
Oh yeah, you will know. You will know that something is up when you see that one. Yeah, you also have the trumpet blast here, and I'm actually happy that you also like the Rydia's return, because I was not sure about that. Was it a hot take or not? But
yeah, it doesn't give trample, but your summon Fat Chocobo gives you trample for 3 full turns. So I think Rydia's return in a lot of games is going to do a pretty good overrun impression. You can also rebuy your summon Fat Chocobo with the second mode on Rydia's return.
That's a much better mode. If you can rebuy a Fat Chocobo or kill opponent, just rebuy the Chocobo. Good things will come your way. And you put Phoenix down there.
Yeah, I
wanted
to shout out Delivery Moogle as well.
Oh yeah, that's a combo. Yeah, that's a combo.
Yeah, so you could shout out Delivery Moogle in the like blue-white artifacts section too, but I think it's a pretty generically good card. Like you can see here, we have White Mage's Staff, Dragoon's Lance.
Okay, wait. Let's go to the back, because I know that you're a degenerate and you know those cards by heart by now. But our listeners hopefully don't. Delivery Moogle, 3 and a white for a Moogle 3/2 flyer. When this creature enters, search your library and/or graveyard for an artifact card with mana value 2 or less. Reveal it and put into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. This is like great. I mean, on rate, it's a 3/2 flyer for 4 mana that draws you a card. And if it doesn't, then probably don't put it in your deck. But you will have artifacts, couple at least, and either they are dead or they are in your library. You can get them.
I wanted to point it out on the green-white page because green-white is not supposed to care about artifacts, but you can still get enough stuff at 2 mana value or less that it's still going to be a good card. And especially
literally, you can get a stuff.
Yeah, especially with Phoenix down, which has a mode of return target creature card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you can cast the Moogle, get the Phoenix down, trade the Moogle off, and then rebuy the Moogle with the Phoenix down and get something else out of your deck too.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why the Phoenix down exiles itself.
Yep.
There are 2 key artifacts in the set, by the way, that are mana value 2 or less. And notably, Delivery Moogle will allow you to eat as much instant ramen as you would like.
Ooh, excellent. I love instant ramen. Oh yeah, what do you think about the white Auracite, sorry. That's the 2 white for an Oblivion Ring artifact. And it also taps for white.
I like this card quite a bit. It's basically Buried in the Garden without mana fixing. And Buried in the Garden was a very good card in both the sets it was in. I'm a little nervous about white Auracite dying to Suplex. which is a card that's going to be played a lot, but I think it's a pretty powerful effect, and there's a lot of stuff to spend your mana on in this format.
Yeah, I'm actually. What do you think about the 7 mana thing that I highlighted in the opening slide? The crystals chosen, the make 4/1/1s and put +1/+1 counter on everything. Because I know the card is powerful when you cast it, but 7 mana is a lot. But it does bring me the sort of vibes of Imperial Oath in a way.
Yeah, definitely good in green too.
So is there like a
there.
white control deck that can use it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So white Auracite also kind of lets you support like your curve of a bunch of 5-drops, which is also pretty nice in green-white specifically, because you want a bunch of like fat chocobos and like top end kind of stuff too. So
yeah, and yeah, the target's a permanent. That's important because it's not only a creature. Can become relevant. Okay, we have the white-blue artifacts.
Yeah, this was me as well.
Okay, I'll first start with the maybe describing the stuff. Yeah, I'm getting to the end of my battery for today. It's approaching 1 a.m. We have 2 signposts. Sid, Timeless Artificer. Should I say 15 signposts? Because Sid, Timeless Artificer comes in variety of arts, which I assume will cost a lot. So if you pick your uncommons and you chuck them in the bin, keep the Sids, because maybe you're sitting on a pile of money there. It's a 4 mana 4/4. Artifact creatures and heroes you control get +1/+1 for each artificer you control and each artificer card in your graveyard. Sid is an artificer. Also, weapons vendor that we mentioned is an artificer, and there are a couple of others in the set. So, and I think there is one equipment that makes a creature into an artificer as well. Sid also has cycling, which I assume is some kind of a joke because it's cycling for white and a blue. You probably don't want to cycle your 4/4 even. Oh, okay, you can put an artificer in the graveyard through that if you already have one Sid on the board, which can be a neat combat trick. Your deck can have any number of cards named Sid, Timeless Artificer, which doesn't matter because that's default and limited. But good power and toughness with some ability that is synergistic, so I think it's pretty decent. The second one is Tidus Blitzbore Star. 3 mana 2/1 for Azorius mana. Whenever an artifact you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And when it attacks, you tap target creature an opponent controls. So that's like super aggressively statted in a way, apart from being a 2/1. But I assume that you play it as a 2/1, you follow it up by the white Auracite, removing 1 blocker, you attack with it for 3, tapping the other blocker, and opens up the gates for all your creatures. Enables that I mentioned here is all the job select artifacts. Here I selected Thief's Knife, which is a 2 and a blue for a job select thing that gives +1/+1, and the creature gains whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So turns into sort of scroll thief. My heart wants to say turns into a thieving magpie or Ophidian, but maybe no one would understand those ancient references. Then we have the Magitech Armor, the 4 mana vehicle that makes a 1/1 hero token, and the Delivery Mogul that searches for artifacts costing 2 or less. Then we have some payoffs. There is the Gaily Cat, 2 and a white for a Flying Vigilance 1/3. But if you have 2 or more artifacts, it gets +2/+0. So 3 mana, 3/3 Flying Vigilance is a good rate. Then you have the Valkyrie Aerial Unit, 5 blue for a 5/4 flyer that surveils 2 on ETB. But it's got affinity for artifacts, so hopefully you will be able to cast it for like 4. And that's pretty good then. Or even for 5, I wouldn't be crying. And you have Rook Turret, which is a 3 and a blue artifact creature, 3/3 flyer. And whenever another artifact you control enters, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So 4 mana 3/3 flyer, which is not absolutely atrocious, that will hopefully at least at some stage loot you a card or 2. So not bad at all. And I think that this looks like could be built defensively, but I think that Signpost at least suggests that it should be on the aggressive side rather. And here we have, I don't know whose version of the Azorius.
Yeah, this was mine. I bent the rules here and put 3
No, no,
copies.
no. The rules don't apply to Whisper Squad.
Okay. Well, I put
That-
3 copies of Magitech Infantry because I
Yeah,
think it's
Whisper
really good.
Squad. Whisper Squad is fine. You
Okay.
can put as many as you want.
Yeah, your deck can have any number of copies, right? I guess it doesn't say it on Magitech.
Well, Magitech Infantry is not really Whisper Squad, but it's as close as you get.
Yeah.
1 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature, and I think it's quite important in this case that it's an artifact creature. It gets +1/+0 as long as you control another artifact, and for 3 mana, you can search your library for another Magitech Infantry and put it onto the battlefield, tapped and then shuffled. So yeah, there is a Whisper Squad vibe in that card. Costs 1 more, but it's a 2/1 probably quite a lot of the time. So
Yeah, I think just a Savannah Lions, like I think if you build your deck right, this is just a 1 mana 2/1 with a very good ability. And I think a lot of times cheap cards, like a Savannah Lions is not an exciting card anymore, but a cheap card with artifact type is potentially very, very good. So I think the type line matters quite a bit here.
and then you have the collection of the usual suspects.
Yeah, the job selects are all going to be great in blue-white artifacts. The version here is, I think, what the standard version is going to look like, where it's just kind of a white mid-range leaning assertive. This is not as many interaction spells as you might hope for, but I think like white Arasite is a removal spell with types, which I think is really good. So I think this is just going to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that, once you play the Magitech Infantry, you can also chuck in a couple of those deal X damage for the creatures and equipment that you have if you want interaction that maybe not everyone will be interested in. But you went like full-blown creatures there. That just like Ice Magic and White Anthracite, and the rest is just equipment and creature.
Probably a little too hot. Not as realistic, but
I mean,
if you are going hard on like Valkyrie aerial unit, you do want most of your cards to be type artifacts.
Exactly.
So I think having mostly permanents is probably a good idea.
I'm wondering how good is the cat gonna be. I mean, 3/3 vigilance flying, that looks solid. But on the other hand, you are definitely fragile to suplex in this deck because everything literally dies to it.
Yeah.
Oh, Sid survives! Yay!
White Auracite into Magitech Infantry is kind of neat too. On like turn 4, you go like White Auracite, their thing, Magitech Infantry with the leftover white. It's kind of neat.
They did a pretty good job too in the set. There's
you'll have multiple versions of it. Oh, is it still before you understood the brief of how the slides work?
So before I understood the briefing.
This is a more controlling version. That's probably your strategy, no?
Yeah. I think one thing that I like about blue is it plays really well at instant speed. So I have like Ice Magic, Syncopate, Eject, the white, the Fate of the Suncryst. I guess all plays well at instant speed, so I think you can still
Fate of the Suncryst is the new version of the Ride's End.
Yeah,
that costs 3 at the discounted version or 5 normal version, but it can destroy non-land permanents and they don't have to be tapped. Oh wait, yeah, it's only cheaper when it does the tap thing. But
I think a key synergy here also is Scorpion Sentinel, which is the 2 mana 1/4 that I mentioned back in the Blue Green Towns one, and how that synergized really well with the card that
7
put a
lands.
counter. Yeah, it synergizes well with the green card that puts a counter on something, gets a land. Here we have Combat Tutorial, which is divination plus you put a counter on something. So curving, you get your Wishcoin Crab and a divination, which is pretty good for 5 mana total.
I mean, when I was thinking about Combat Tutorial, yeah, again, it's a divination that puts a +1/+1 counter on something. I was thinking, oh, finally a blue card draw spell that is aggressive. And now we know what aggression means. Aggression means turning a 1/4 into a Wishcoin Crab.
Yeah. So
and Summon Primal Garuda. What do we think about this card? Because I thought it was quite an interesting one. Because It's a 4-mana saga, 3/3 flying, and the ETB first ability is deal 4 damage to a target tapped creature an opponent controls. And I find it a weird kind of conflict in that card, is that you want to be playing it in this sort of assertive deck, but at the same time you want to be attacked. So do we go full-blown skies in order to be able to play that card? And then they can attack you back, and then you can get the value from the Garuda.
It's definitely good there, but I think 3/3 body, if you are pretty certain you're going to be on the back foot, I think the 3/3 body enters deal 4 to something is just going to be very valuable. So I'm much more interested in that card in this type of deck than I would be in the other blue-white deck I had, or something like green-white, where you're hopefully, or especially red-white, where you're hoping to be attacking. It's not going to have a target.
Yeah, it's also like if you play Flyers, the second and third chapter of the saga, which is give something +1/+0 and flying until end of turn, is not so useful. So I guess that you have to play those ground creatures to do it. But yeah, I sense a bit of a tension there. It would be great with the Adalbert Steiner, the 2/1 lifelinker. Give it a flying and then chipping in for something while killing another attacker.
It's pretty good with Renoa Heartily as well, with the attack trigger. Jump that thing, give it flying.
Yep. Okay, we can.
Yeah, we could skip this.
We can skip this because it was in the wrong in the wrong part of the brief. Okay, we have red-green landfall aggro, and I started building it, and I just don't see the aggro part of it. I see like maybe a mid-range or something, but. Let's start with the aggro signpost. One of them is a 6-drop. Nothing screams aggro like a 6-drop. It's Gladiolus Amicitia, 6-mana 6/6. When it enters, search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Another ramp card, by the way. For a land card, wow, any land card. That's proper Primeval Titan. And it has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, another target creature you control gets +2/+2 and trample until end of turn. So that's like a super top end for the aggressive landfall deck. It gives you a landfall. It makes something way bigger and gives a trample. Hopefully you can push some damage through that. And then you still have a 6/6 body that can attack next turn. Notably, it cannot give itself +2/+2 trample. So that's a bit of a bummer, because 8/8 trample next turn would have been nice. But, whatever. The other signpost, opposite side of the spectrum, red-green, so 2 mana for 1/2. Nothing screams aggression like a 2 mana 1/2. It has landfall. Whenever you play a land, you rummage. And then it has ability X, top, return target saga card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. It gains haste until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. And again, this is like, doesn't scream to me like an aggressive card. It screams to me like I want to accrue a ton of value card, which is not necessarily the same. I mean, sure, you can recur a big creature, but it takes mana, time. You needed to have that creature and lost it already at some stage. So I don't see exactly how that landfall is aggro. I can see it as a very interesting landfall mid-range deck, but not aggro. Yes, you can have a turn 1 Saj Chocobo, which is a green for a 0/1 bird, and whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's a great turn 1 play, a terrible top deck late in the game. But apart from that, I don't see those landfall super aggressive things. I see mid-range things like Chocobo Racetrack, 5 mana artifact, and then it has landfall. When a land you control enters, create a void. Or Sandworm, 5 mana 5/4 with haste, and when it enters, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. Which the joke is that, most of the time you will destroy one of your lands and get a landfall trigger out of that in a convoluted way. So what do you think about this archetype? And maybe you can move to the deck. I don't know who built it, but it's got 2 Gladios Amicitia.
This was mine again. I actually think red-green looks quite good. But
yeah. I'm just saying it doesn't look aggro.
Does not look like green-red landfall aggro. I think a lot of the landfall cards look way slower than that. So this is kind of just a mid-range. I would still call it a beatdown deck, though you are playing 3 6-drops here. I just think that Summon Fat Chocobo looks really good. And I think the Chocobo tokens specifically are going to be 3/2s a lot of the time, which is a stat line that really likes trample because it's going to deal a damage even if it trades off with your opponent's 2/2 or 2/1. So yeah, just a very straightforward green beatdown deck. I think Call the Mountain Chocobo. You can kind of treat this like a 3/2 almost on your turn that draws a land. This is a 4 mana. Search your library for a mountain card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle, and you make the 2/2 Chocobo with landfall +1/+0. And it also has flashback for 7 mana. So you're able to
Which after a couple is not an unrealistic premise.
Yeah, right.
So it draws you 2 cards.
Yeah, and one of those cards that you draw will draw you another mountain. So
yeah, there you go.
I think it all works. I just don't think landfall aggro. If you're coming into landfall aggro expecting step links and plated GOP'd.
Well, that's what my head tells me. I mean, but you have Torgal. That's the wolf that ramps you as well. Again, it looks very mid-rangey, very mid-rangey. Like
I can't believe they forgot to put plated Geopede on the bonus sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Other cards that you select, well, you have the side quest in there. Side quest, raise a Chocobo. It's
I think
2 mana enchantment. You make a bird, and if you have 4 or more birds, you transform this into another bird that gives all the birds. There's going to be a lot of the word bird in this monologue. That gives all your birds another instance of this ability. When a land falls, they get +1/+0. Weirdly, it doesn't give it to itself. But I think that given that you have Fat Chocobos, which make 2 birds, Choco Comet, Call of the Mountain Chocobo, what else is there? The greens, that they also make a Chocobo.
Gishal Greens just is a 2 mana, make a Chocobo, and has flash.
There's a couple of rares if you want to play with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think you go in not expecting to flip side quest raise a Chocobo, but I think it will happen incidentally.
Yeah, it's not should be the main plan, but if it does, it's super upside.
I think red-green is probably the best place to try to be able to flip raise a Chocobo because you have Call of the Mountain Chocobo.
White is also white also has the Saga Chocobo, the 3 mana one.
Oh yeah, it has the uncommon
and the uncommon that bounces things back to your head. You can actually bounce the side quest, replay it.
True.
Another Chocobo. We're in business. But yeah, I think Naya is the Chocobo kind of wedge. And weirdly, the Chocobo Lord isn't banned for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
You never know. And Blitzball Shot. How do we think about this card before the format starts? That's the +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. 2 mana instant speed.
We had it in LCI as a staggering size, and we had it in murders as I can't remember the name, and it was good both times.
Something with an F.
Fanatical Strength? No, not
Fanatical Strength. Yep.
It was Fanatical Strength. Okay.
Yep.
We got there.
Yeah, it was pretty good both those times, and I don't expect it to be any different.
Trample is good on a combat trick that makes things big.
Trample is also good when your Chocobos pump their power and
yeah,
incentivize being blocked by a 2/2.
All right, there goes the landfall aggro that is not an aggro. Red, black mage aggro. Okay, and again, very liberal use of the word aggro. Looks to me like a sort of control deck that relies on pinging, which is, I don't know, black mage cheese your opponent out more than black mage aggro, because 0/1 stat line is not exactly screaming aggression to me. Signpost is Black Waltz number 3. That's 2 black-red for a 2/2 flying death touch. Whenever you cast a creature spell, Black Waltz number 3 deals 2 damage to each opponent. And this is like the buffed version of the typical wizard in this set, which is an 0/1 that pings for 1 and is a theme for this particular archetype. Then the second one that we have is Garland, Knight of Cornelia, black-red for a 3/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1. And also, for 7 mana, you can return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield, transformed into a 5/5 with some ability. I think that Garland looks pretty strong. Black Waltz number 3, time will tell, because I'm skeptical of playing 4 mana 2/2s, even with a high upside ability. And the ability is a high upside. You untap with it and you cast 2 spells, and you pinked for 4 and you get more than your money's worth out of it. But yeah, if you don't untap with it, then you spend 4 mana and opponents spend 1 mana to kill it, which is not optimal.
The weird thing about Black Waltz number 3 is that there's not a cantrip. Like, there's not a 1 mana draw card, really. Like,
I thought that the weird thing about it is that there's no Black Waltz number 2.
Yeah, that's also weird. We're gonna have to get the lore heads to explain that one. But if you could untap and cast like 3 or 4 spells in a turn, I think it would have something to it. But you're gonna untap and it's gonna be hard to cast more than 2 spells after it survives. So
just need to open Deadly Dispute from the bonus sheet, and then you're good. Untap Deadly Dispute, sacrifice something else, make a treasure, cast another thing, shock something, done. But yeah, I mean, it will depend on its survivability. And then you have other cards that make those, as I said, 0/1 black wizard creature tokens. There is a Mysidian Elder, 3 mana for a 1/3. When it enters, you make the 0/1 black wizard that taps, pinks whenever you cast a non-creature spell. You have Queen Bran, 3 mana 2/1 with prowess. Whenever Queen Bran attacks, create an 0/1 black wizard that pinks whenever you cast a non-creature spell. There's a Black Mage's Rod, equipment with job select. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has the ability that it pings whenever you cast a non-creature spell. So there's plenty of those kind of things that make the wizards. What else? There's Cornered by Black Mages, 1 black for an edict, but you also create the mage, so sort of mage edict. And then the payoffs are removal spell, cheap removal spells, and things that let you recur your non-creature spells, like Sorceress Schemes, 4 mana for a sorcery, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, or exile with Flashback to your hand, and then you add red mana when you cast it. So you can cast something with Flashback, flash it back, exile it, cast Sorceress Schemes, return it to your hand, repeat this, and you cast like billion spells, and then you ping with your wizards at the same time. The skill, I think, is that the wizards are nothing, and then they cannot block, they cannot attack, so you are at the mercy of your interaction in order to start killing your opponent. And a couple of other cards. I think Choco Comet will work very fine there because it's a spell that makes a creature and is a removal, which you want to because you don't have blockers, because all your blockers are 0/1. And you have Circle of Power, 4 mana sorcery. You draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life, and you create the wizard. And also wizards you control get +1/+0 and gain lifelink until end of turn, which means that if you cast more spells, they will start pinging and gaining your life. This is a good spell to double spell, actually. And maybe things like Red Mage's Rapier, 1 in a red for job select thing, and equipped creature has whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it's a wizard in addition to its other types. So basically a slick shot show off at home kind of scenario here. Who built the black red?
That was me. And this also exhibits what we were talking about a little bit earlier about there's quite a bit of wizard synergy going on here. And I care quite a bit about what cards I'm putting in generating wizards, not just because they're O1s that will ping, but because of cards that are buffing wizards or caring about the number of wizards. I mean, you can see one of them there, Kuja, Genome Sorcerer, at the beginning of your end step. That's the rare, one of the rares that I chose for this deck. At the beginning of your end step, create a tap 0/1 black wizard creature token with whenever that pings for 1 when you cast a non-creature spell. But the key is if you control 4 or more wizards, you transform Kuja. And when Kuja transforms, it transforms into Trans Kuja Fate Defied, which is a 4/6 with the ability, if a wizard you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. And so all of a sudden, if you're transforming that, you can deal an awful lot of damage in one turn. Because the thing I think that's going on here, we've had a lot of these like pinging creatures when non-creature spells are cast. But in most of the sets in the past, there's been like a particular creature or maybe 2 of them. And so the problem is those decks fall apart when that creature gets killed or you don't have enough density of them on the board. You can very quickly fill your board with 3 or 4 little O1s running around, and maybe you use 1 or 2 of them to chunk block or something. The density of creatures that ping here are such that your opponent's removal becomes very awkward. Unless your opponent can sweep, it's going to be very difficult for them to eliminate the ability for you to ping. And the other thing that then drives this deck is you have things that are both enablers and payoffs at the same time. I mean, you have the Black Mage's Rod, the Red Mage's Rapier. The Red Mage's Rapier, by the way, I think is a really important card because it's one of the few wizards that can do some attacking and blocking. I mean, you're creating a 3/1 for 2 mana. And the reason that I like it in the deck is because it's a non-creature spell that creates a wizard. It doesn't create one of the wizards that pings, but it still creates a wizard. And it's functioning as a non-creature spell that's creating creatures. So we talked about like, well, how often are you going to be able to cantrip, or how often are you going to be able to, generate double spell? Thunder Magic is super important here as being a 1 mana spell that you can cast at instant speed, and so therefore you could potentially create something and then, deal 2 damage to something on their side, and oh, by the way, you're dealing 3 or 4 damage maybe to their face from various pings. Summon GF Ifrit is probably Ifrit, actually, just spelled differently. But anyway, Summon GF Ifrit is another card that if you have it down, you're looting, and therefore you're generating some card draw. And even in its later chapters, it's generating additional mana, giving you increased capability to double spell while still being a 3/2 for 3. I think there's a lot of value in that card. I only put 1 in because I can imagine that card being in high demand in a number of different decks. But that's also why I put in a couple of copies of Laughing Mad, so that you're tormenting voice, but you're generating some additional cards. You think about doing that something like on turn 5, right? And you're casting a non-creature spell and you're pinging them, and then your chances of drawing another creature spell in a deck constructed this way are pretty high. And then the way you keep yourself alive in this deck is with Circle of Power, where you have a bunch of these little wizards running around, and you can all of a sudden give them +1/+0 on life gain. And that's also a card draw. I mean, the fact that you're losing 2 life, we haven't seen very often. The black, draw 2 and lose 2 life. Well, yeah, we've seen that all over the place. But there generally hasn't been a way in that card to gain the life back that you just lost, right? You usually have to do that some other way. And so draw 2, lose 2 life, create a 0/1 that pings, and oh, by the way, all of your wizards have +1/+0 and lifelink until the end of turn. The only drawback of that card is that it's a sorcery and not an instant. It sure would be great if you could, generate some chump blocks that gain you some life at the same time. But that's quite a bit of additional value, I think, in the typical 3 mana or 4 mana draw 2, lose 2 life card. And the thing I like about it is both of its additional parts fit very well with what this deck is trying to do. Basically, stay alive long enough to ping them to death.
Yeah, I still think there is a certain shortage of super cheap spells for that, because you really would want to double spell or something, especially with like Circle of Power. You want to cast it and then cast another spell so you can get life back, but not sure that's going to be always possible.
I mean, hope in a deck like this, there are lots of twos that generate creatures. I would not be hoping to play Circle of Power on turn 4.
No.
Right? I mean, any of the other, like, creature cards, the summons, the black waltzes. The black waltz I probably also would prefer to not play in turn 4. But you look at playing Kuja, you look at playing the summons, and that other summon that we have up there also is a really important card. The summon Esperama, the uncommon that 3/3 saga creature that step 1 deals damage equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard to a target creature an opponent controls. That's like the equivalent of the green-white card that we just looked at before, but for red. And then its other 2 chapters are wizards you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Again, making them functional. They're picking off opponents' X1s. If you happen to have a wide board, you might be able to do 4 damage in the same turn that you are pinging them for something. I really do think there's something here just by sheer density of cards that ping.
I think you uttered the words that I'm worried about in this archetype when you said, by making them functional, which implies that they were not functional before, which is the sort of worry I have, that it will fall into the same trap as blue-red fell in Bloomborough, where it had to do the extra step just to be as good as other color combinations are on rate. And I'm not going to say that this is not going to be a good archetype. I'm just warning that it might fall into the same trap that few of them went before. And yes, once you do the thing, you are competitive. But if you, God forbid, not do the thing, then you're just like left with a bunch of nothing. And I'm a bit I'm a bit scared if that's going to be good enough in this format. But for sure, it looks sweet. Also, out of professional obligation, nothing in Genome is sorcery. It's just pure biochemistry, yeah? Just pure biochemistry. We know how it works. No magic. I don't know why it annoys me when they combine the words like genome with magic.
They're just using the wrong genomenclature, right?
Yeah. Genomenclature. There we go. It's way too late for me for those kind of things. Okay, cool. We got the last one, and it's also you, Tresio, no? Hopefully. Or maybe someone else.
I think that might have been me, actually.
It might have been you. Okay. Blue-black control. Well, at least it's not aggro. And it doesn't look like aggro also. So, creatures we have, there's a signpost. Lock Coal. 1 blue-black for a 2/3 Death Touch lifelink, which is... I'm already happy with that, to be fair. Then when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. And often it will, because who wants to block a 2/3 lifelinker with Death Touch? So that looks pretty solid. Shame that it doesn't do it on enter as well. I would have been much more convinced that Lock Coal is great. But I think it's good enough on rate. And then we have Ultimecia Time Sorceress, 3 blue-black for a 4/5. When it enters, you surveil 2. And at the beginning of your end step, you may pay 8 mana for blue, black, and exile 8 cards from your graveyard. If you do, transform Ultimecia into a 7/7, but you also get an extra turn. So you basically time walk at uncommon, which is quite a lot. but also the requirements are super high. So I don't know. And honestly, I was just like dredging the barrel to find enablers and payoffs and key cards because there's no such thing in the control deck. I mean, control deck is just a state of mind more than a simple synergy with, oh, I have this enabler and this payoff. I put Heck Ties as an enabler because it's a 1/1 that maybe blocks something and chumps it and removes resources from the hand of the opponent. Overkill because you will need removal. And Scorpion Sentinel because it's a 1/4, potentially a 2/5, which is a perfect stat line for a control creature, as we learned earlier today. Then you have some payoffs. I think that it's a control, but it will focus on artifacts still. So I put Travel the Overworld, the 7 mana affinity for towns, draw 4 cards because you want to be drawing cards. But more importantly, I put Ether, which is a 4 mana artifact. And you can tap it, exile it, add blue mana. And when you cast the next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Because I don't know. I think that some powerful spells are nice to be copied, and it will give you a lot of card advantage if you do so, and also gives you mana to do some shenanigans. And if there is one deck in the format that can afford a 4 mana do nothing artifact like Ether, it's gonna be surely the control deck, as it's used to doing nothing. And then maybe things like Ice Flan, the Island Cycler, that is a 5/4 that Bergstrider. As a top end that buys you more time to stabilize. And some key cards, counter spells like Swallowed by Leviathan, Sleep Magic, which is the new version of Unable to Scream. 1 mana, tap a creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and then pray that opponent doesn't have a fight spell. Because when enchantment creature is dealt damage, sacrifice this aura. So don't combine it with red damage sweepers because you might wake up with something. Yeah, possibly. Heck Ties could play a pretty similar role to the 1/1 Burglar Rat from Mum did. And then Fight On because you might want to rebuy the stuff that you traded up earlier. Yeah, and there's a Final Flourish. So the sacrifice for a kicker to give something -6/-6, Heck Ties is a good thing to sacrifice to that. Let's see what you built.
So yeah, here. So this is like a blue-black kind of like put cards in your graveyard turbo. And also I tried to build a little bit around the 1/4 that draws a card when you scry and surveil. So basically I'm calling out Shambling Seath and Dreams of Laguna here as good things to discard to lock Cole's trigger or like surveil into your graveyard. And then get them back and then like, you can like flash Dreams of Laguna back for value or just like get Shambling Seath back as well. And then continue discarding it to lock Cole if you can keep hitting your opponent. So nice free value. And then here I want to call out some like instant speed interaction. Syncopate plays really well with Dreams of Laguna. And then Sephiroth's Intervention also plays well with the general instant theme of this deck. This deck can play a lot of instants and as well with Swallowed by Leviathan, Vane's Treachery. All of its interaction is instant speed. So if you hold up like a bunch of mana, you have a lot of different options to work with. Like, you can flash back your Dreams of Laguna, or you can Sephiroth's Intervention their guy, or you can Syncopate, or you can, you can cast Vane's Treachery. Lots of options.
Worth noting that Swallowed by Leviathan is a 3 mana counter that lets you surveil 2, and then counters the spell unless opponent pays X, where X is the number of permanents in your graveyard.
I think it's the number of cards.
Cards in your graveyard. Which is nice because the surveil lets you put 2 of those if you really need to into your graveyard and therefore fuel the stuff. When you have things that you actively want to put in your graveyard, even better. And I guess that the cards that we mentioned, the Sieth, Dreams of Laguna, are cards that you actively want to be putting in your graveyard anyway. So that's a neat combo there. And you also have Demon Wall.
Yeah, I wanted to mention the Demon Wall combat tutorial combo. Demon Wall does not care.
Okay, let's read what the Demon Wall does, because Again, not everyone sicko. Demon Wall, 2 mana, 3/3 wall with Defender and Menace. And you might think, why Menace on the wall? Who cares about that? Well, first of all, as long as this creature has a counter on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender, which means it is Drowsy Tea, basically, ish, in the version that it was in M21, which basically you put a counter on itself and then it could attack. This is the same. You put a counter on it, it can attack. And it has an ability for 6 mana. You can put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature. Also, mark that this is not an ability that is gated. So you can't just do it once. You can do it as many times as you want. So you can just continue growing that thing late in the game. And with so much stuff that you can do at instant speed, I guess you keep up a syncopate. Opponent doesn't play anything you want to counter. Sure, let's use the 6 mana to make our Demon Wall bigger again. And Combat Tutorial is the 3 mana draw to put a +1/+1 counter on something. So I assume that your plan is turn 2 Demon Wall, turn 3 Combat Tutorial, put a counter on the Demon Wall.
Yeah, that's the general idea. Plus, you also have Magic Dampener to protect your Demon Walls, in some sense. And, you've got a lot of, good quality, creature targets to protect with Magic Dampener. Maybe even a second one wouldn't be bad. But you can also use Combat Tutorial to put a counter on your Pixie, which is the 2/1 that surveils flying that surveils when it attacks, which turns that into a pretty meaningful upgrade as well. And if I was to play Hectize, making Hectize into a 2/2 makes it a lot more relevant as well.
And you have the 1/4, which you can make into a 2/5, and that's Wishcoin Crab, so busted.
True, yeah. You can even make the 1/3 into a 2/4, although of course that's a lot worse.
That's substandard. No, we don't do that kind of thing.
It's no Wishcoin Crab.
Exactly.
Let's emphasize what you're getting in that Demon Wall Combat Tutorial combo. I mean, that's 5 mana for a 4/4 Menace to draw 2 cards. That's pretty good, right? You'd enjoy that card for 5 mana.
Yeah, that's pretty aggressive actually. Maybe the control is the true aggro.
I mean, a lot of these creatures attack really well, right? We look at the Pixie; it's a 2/1 flyer. The Demon Wall would be a 4/4 Menace if you can execute this line. Lock Coal's pretty hard to block, especially if you have a bunch of speed interaction. And Ultimecia also pretty big, and it's pretty hard to block these guys. So you can go kind of a more tempo control, tempo route as well. As you can play one of these guys, hold up a counter spell.
I see a surprising lack of ejects.
Yeah, I wanted to try to fit the Demon Walls in and the Pixies. The problem is that blue and black's common 2-drops are not great, especially blues common 2-drops.
You mean a problem in Final Fantasy or a problem in the last 7 years of Magic set design? Look, you can't have good 2-drops in a color that per definition can only have a 2/1 or a 3/3 with a massive upside, and never a 2/2 even.
Yeah. Impossible to get a 2/2 at common,
No. You can get one at Mythic.
True. I can get one at rare even.
There is one rare, and there's exactly 2 blue 2-drops that are 2/2s. Just Newt and Tygum.
There are some with downsides, but yeah, those are the only 2.
Yeah, no. Okay, yeah, with the downside, you can get a 3/3, you can get a 4/4. I'm talking about 2/2s with no downside and potentially an upside. Which I think is slowly starting to become a problem for blue, because if they push the also none of you put the 2/1 flyer that makes a 1/1 into any of the skeletons. I think
Sam put it in one of his decks. I think.
Are we a hater of Printing Champion minus?
I love that card.
I
love that card. It doesn't really synergize with anything.
Although perfectly replied by a Chocobo that kills the flyer and puts a 2/2 in front of the 1/1.
Yeah. True.
What a win.
I think I didn't put it in this deck because my 3-drop slot is so full of stuff. But it certainly is a good card.
Certainly better than the 1/4 that draws your card when you surveil. But It's not about efficiency here. It's about showing a vision, and that's what we did.
I mean, this deck has a lot of cards that surveil, so it's got the dreams, it's got the counterspell, it's got Ultimecia that surveils.
It certainly has the dreams.
Yeah, the 2/1 surveils when it attacks too.
Oh,
Just
those
play-
dreams. No, I thought that you had dreams in sense of you offer a dream of drawing a card whenever you surveil.
It does also have those dreams, but I want to see if I think the density is there if you can sufficiently protect it. But
Well, and there's also a rare you didn't put in. Golbez surveils every time an artifact enters. So there's I think there's different combinations of things that are creating kind of those trigger synergies that you've built here.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I was talking about, pockets of synergies. I think that this set, we can talk all we want about those archetypes, but you will have to often improvise based on the rares that you open to fine-tune the build and maximize those pockets of synergies. And I like that idea, and I'm hoping that it's going to work as an interesting draft format. It's going to be a nightmare to figure everything out, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be listening to many, many episodes of rough drafts that tell me exactly about those niche builds built around one card. But it's not going to be super straightforward to figure out things from the data, because data focuses on the average vision of an archetype. And when you have sublime, subtle, different versions of it, it sort of can be confusing because you will get mixed, too much noise, not enough signal, basically. So I wonder when I will be able to step in with proper data analysis. I will have to wait for the public data sets to be published. But okay, 1:30. I'm running on absolute reserve. Let's move on. You will be able to find the skeletons that we were talking about and the ones that we were not talking about because of lack of space, lack of time. In the slides, which you will be able to find on my Patreon. I'm going to put them outside of the paywall, because why would I charge people for something I didn't do? And of course, all the other slides will be also there. So give it a visit. You did a good job of trying to guess the best cards. Thunder Magic. SamP is high on Thunder Magic. Tresio is high on Thunder Magic. Springbok believes more in white aura side. And then Thunder Magic. So we think that Shock is good.
Oh, I didn't realize it was supposed to be an ordinal ranking. But yeah.
Okay, well, it's not ordinal. I mean, we don't have to.
And look, Circo, I mean, Sam and I both listed Dragoon's Wyvern, so we gave it some love, right?
Yeah, you gave it some love. That's true. You gave it some love.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe we didn't put in any archetypes because
not enough to put in the deck, but good enough to put in top 3 commons of the set.
Well, because it probably fits in just about everything, right? It's
Yeah, I know. It's not
going to be hard for it.
There's no need to even highlight that card. We know that it's good.
There's a lot of 3-drops as well that I was like trying to fit into my decks because they seemed like fun, interesting build arounds. And I was like, well, if I put all these 3-drops in, I can't put another one in.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting format to crack, and I'm looking forward to it. Well, in a couple of days, I guess. So yay. Are we all in the early access?
I am.
I'm not yet.
I put in requests for both
hopefully it'll come. Yeah. Okay, and I think with that we're going to leave it there. Before we go, Sam, do you have anything to plug?
You can find my Blue Sky, which will point to my podcast called Rough.
Oh no, you do it the wrong way. You can find me on Lords of Limited, from where you can go to my Blue Sky, from where you can go to my podcast. That's how you go.
Well, I'm not an official guest. They've never officially.
No, but they always talk about you, and for a good reason, by the way.
Yep. You're just giving them free content.
It's true. I gotta start charging them.
Nah, don't worry. Free real estate. Your podcast called
Rough Drafts.
Rough Drafts is a good podcast. I have to say that Lords of the Limited are always good in showing me people to follow, because that's how I discovered Protocols. That's how I discovered 17 Lands, which arguably is pretty important for me. And that's how I discovered SamP's podcast, which is also great. I highly recommend it. It's a perfect dog walking exercise because the episodes are manageable chunks of 25 minutes roughly, and talk about weird things about one card with a lot of deep thought into how the things were built. And it was fun. And Tarkir Dragonstorm, I'm sure it's going to get even better with the Final Fantasy, because I think its set looks like it's even more suited for your kind of content.
Yeah, we'll see. I wasn't initially excited, but seeing the full set, I think I'll have a lot to talk about. So
there we go. Springbok, do you have anything to plug?
Sometimes I stream on twitch.tv/Springbok7. That's about all I got to plug.
Sometimes. Tresio, do you have anything to plug?
Just that I am often active on a number of the discords, Circuvitz's Discord and Limited Level Up's Discord and some others. So if you're looking for me, I'm often in one of those places. And as I noted there, if you have interest in seeing me stream live, it's something I've never done before because I believe in demand before supply. So if you're interested, leave a comment on the video.
Excellent. And that's how Tresio is a part of the Skeleton Crew, because he was an active member of, he is an active member of my Discord, got spotted there and volunteered to do stuff for the stream, and here he is. All right, and I have nothing to plug except for fear, pain, and being very, very tired. So I'm going to plug myself to sleep. Is that risky? No, I think it's not cancelable or something. And I'll see you next week a week and a half, let's say, when I will start talking about the early data for the format. But till then, bye-bye.